right. How y'all doing out there? Hope everybody is well. Bear with me a little bit. Y'all know what it is. Welcome to the Onyx Report. We are back in here. Remember, this is where we as Black male justice advocates uplift Black men and boys using critical analysis. Back in here another week. Hope your week is going well. I know mine is. My students and I are examining fences, so it's been a very positive week as far as that's concerned. What's up, brother Ian? As usual, I appreciate it. Going to work in the comments section. AL Evans, what's going on? Barry, what's happening? Aquateki, what's going on? Yeah, hope everybody's well. So first and foremost, I would like to give my thanks to my subscribers and supporters. I will be doing some media review pieces for my Patreon group very soon. There's already a flick that I've already watched that I will post a video up on, very shortly. In the meantime, let me shout out my subscribers. So check it out. Right. So much appreciation to all those that support the show. Make sure that you are doing so as well. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel so we can keep this stuff coming. What's up, Donnie? See Donnie in the comment section too. Hybrid Ninjas, what's up? Malika, good to see you, brother. AB, what's the word? Grade I9. No one, what's up? I will be opening up the comments on this one a little bit later, so I hope y'all hang with me. Joe Average Brother, what's going on? Yeah. So got a lot to get into today. And hopefully we can, have an interesting time putting a lot of this information out. Nevertheless, this is what it is. So let me start with our Sacred Black Masculine series. Y'all know I've been doing more daily, shorter videos, getting to some key points. But my Wednesday lives, I got to keep it going. So I didn't go last week, so it's been a bit busy this week. But I thought, let me get this back in. So in the meantime, let me first go ahead and get this up. Y'all know what it is, right? And I would say, if you have not become a member, you can do so on YouTube. Just click the join button right next to the subscribe button. And I'm hoping that you've already subscribed. Hit the bell so you'll always be alerted to my lives. I've been doing freestyle lives, just drop lives with no particular time, just surprise lives. And they've ranged all over the clock. So if you hit the bell, you should be notified when I go live, and you can check it out. But there are different levels of membership on YouTube. You can choose your level of membership and participate, or you can go to Patreon and you can support the show monthly. You can support the kind of media reviews that I do of different films, or you can support the Institute for Black Male Studies, right? So I hope you will participate one way or another. All right. So we go to our Sacred Black Masculine series. And for those who don't know, this is a series I started a couple years ago to celebrate Black men. And we definitely do that over here. We celebrate Black men because it's not something that you see done often. And if you're not sure about that, you can see the kind of smoke Tina Knowles Lawson has been getting simply for creating a documentary that chooses to humanize Black men. And to what we've seen so far, there was actually a petition put forward to ban it. And mind you, it hasn't even been shown yet. Now, I can say I'm not a fan of the number of the people she pulled in, and I think there are definitely some figures that needed to be brought in that I don't believe have. But again, none of us have seen it yet. It's not out, and there's already a petition to get rid of it, simply because it looks at black men as human beings, and that's all we know about it. And that's basically a verbal statement coming from her, Tina. So that said, humanizing black men or seeing them in a positive light is something that is considered controversial. Isn't that interesting? Barry, appreciate that support. Definitely follow his advice, right? Barry says, like, share, subscribe, contribute. Yeah, appreciate that, man. So, the Sacred Black Masculine series, again, we celebrate black men, and this is organic. It depends on how it crosses my desk. It is not even something I go out to look for. It's just either what's sent to me or what I just happen to run across. But, every week I try to celebrate the accomplishments of various black men, however that seems to go. The first one this week comes out of an article you can find on HuffPost.com. It's entitled, "This Black Chef is Creating a More Affordable, Realistic Type of Culinary Education." Daryl Schuler wants to rethink how cooking is taught and who's leading the kitchen. Shout out to this brother. I'll go into it a little bit so you can kind of see more about who he is. I forgot here. Let me. It's interesting looking at how many brothers on YouTube are doing the work of several different people, were this on a television channel. And yet, some of us, not necessarily myself, are becoming more savvy about how to do it. And it's some of the most incredible production work I've ever seen being done by individual brothers with no funding, coming up here on public media, social media, and just creating all kinds of incredible platforms. And I'm an 70s born kid, 80s teenager. So I remember a time period on television where you got what you got. There was no rewind. There was no rewatch. There was no, media that you made that you got to see. It was all whatever the television put forward. And now I'm seeing, cats making their own stuff, and they're doing some amazing work. So even though there's a little mistakes here and there on my part, I'm still glad to see this era. All right, let me see. Sam Nusray says documentary is not controversial, it's dangerous in the words of those who are opposing it. Black men being recognized as human is dangerous to a lot of people. Indeed. Absolutely. It is what it is. So anyway, so let's get this in. So there we go. So again, this is the piece you can check out. Black Chef is creating a more affordable, realistic type of culinary education. Right? It says Chef Daryl Schuler is the world's first African-American and minority chef to earn the prestigious title of Certified Master Chef, the distinction administered by the American Culinary Federation and currently held by fewer than 100 people. Go ahead, man. Schuler has also won 12 gold medals in local and national cooking competitions, including the Culinary Olympics, and he's been inducted into the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. He also founded the Schuler Institute, an educational program based in Georgia that provides grants and scholarships, as well as real-world training, exposure, and career options in the culinary industry. In this Voices in Food story, the Southern-born chef shares how he plans to assist in the creation of future certified chefs. Says, I grew up in a blue-collar household in Central Florida. My mom worked at the assembly line at a citrus factory. She processed fruit into jars all day. I remember one day when I was a kid, she came home wearing white aprons and hairnets, and while I was cleaning orange pulp off her shoes, I thought, I don't ever want to wear the same uniform every day. He says, but look at me now. Right? He says, we couldn't afford to eat out at restaurants. Being a single mom with a 7th grade education, my mom could only afford modest meals, but we all helped in the kitchen. And when we had a little bit extra, we shared our food with neighbors and church. That's where I got a love for hospitality and giving back. Right? Says, my culinary journey started in high school. I was a basketball player and was hoping to become a career athlete, When I took my first extracurricular class in cooking, I fell in love. I later enrolled at the Art Institute of America in Atlanta. It was my commencement ceremony that I heard Chef Daryl Evans speak. He talked about him making it to the United States Culinary Olympic team in '92. He looked like me, African American male, and even had my first name Daryl. So I thought, if he can do it, I can too. And he became my idol. Not only did I make it to the ACF US Culinary Olympic team, but in 2014, I became the first African American and minority person to become a certified master chef. Many people told me that I couldn't do it, that the test is not designed for people of color. My mom said that I was being hard-headed, but I was determined to prove them wrong. Right? Let's continue a little bit here. It is true that a lot of the food industry is biased. Even though we minorities are dominant in the industry, we're not always put in the spotlight. It also doesn't help that the epitome of culinary achievement is measured by classical European cooking standards. When you are cooking ethnic cuisine, people pigeonhole you to keep cooking ethnic or soul. That's one of the problems of the industry, or in our industry. The biggest problem is how cooking is taught at schools. I equate culinary arts with sports. Besides passion, you need to practice your skills and techniques, be competitive with those who are older and stronger, and have a lot of self-discipline. Cooking is just one of the skills you need coming out of culinary school. Students also need to learn budgeting, time management, leadership, etc. Now, this is one of the things I like. I like to see programs where you have brothers taking a strong stance in being leaders, particularly to usher the way in for younger folk that are normally excluded from being able to participate in any critical way. And then going above and beyond what the letter of the Institute is about in terms of, in this instance, it's not just cooking. He recognizes other issues, that students are facing, right? But budgeting, time management, leadership. This is the same thing in the academy. It's pretty much the same thing in every environment, right? There's so many things that we tend to get excluded from that we need a lot more than just the letter of the training, right? He says, when I was a corporate executive chef and director of education for North America at Le Cordon Bleu College of Culinary Arts, I saw a huge divide between what students were learning and what the industry was expecting of them. Businesses wanted to hire graduates who were ready on day one. So I had the vision to create the Schuler Institute in 2020 and teamed up with my partner, Sean Rush, to break the paradigm of how culinary education has traditionally been delivered. The platform is unique because the students are in a real world environment in front of actual guests, and they come to know what it feels like to have skin in the game. Institutional culinary schools today have about a 16-to-1 student to teacher ratio. They will teach you how to hold a knife and cut an onion all day long for almost 10 weeks. The program advances as you go along, but still hovers around teaching core cooking principles. You cook a nice dish, take a picture, please the instructor, and get a good grade. In my mind, that's outdated and boring. I want students to learn business, science, and practical knowledge they can use in all sorts of food-related jobs. I want to demystify all the things cooks are not privy to, like how to negotiate contracts, wait tables, strategize logistics, and communicate under pressure. People are looking at the culinary arts from a business standpoint, not just to be a good chef. Now, that's real talk. And I would say the same thing happens to Black graduate students in the academy. As I was training for my doctorate, there was no formal training on how to negotiate contracts. There was no training on look, this is how deep it is. There isn't even any training on how to teach. You learn your area, you do your research, and then by the time you develop a dissertation, you create an idea, because the idea is just supposed to contribute new knowledge to the world, right? But there's no formal training in most graduate programs that I'm familiar with where you're actually taught how to teach. You get a job, you're given a class, and you figure it out mainly from stuff that you've experienced, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those are the best ways to teach. And it falls on you as an individual to kind of pull these things together. But for the last number of years, you're spending a great deal of time just, trying to figure out how to navigate your program. So there's a lot of this stuff that he's talking about that go beyond just culinary issues here. What's up, Keel or Kiel? Black Uru, good to have you in here, man. Haven't seen you in a minute. I'm gonna bring people up, man. I hope you're still around a little bit later when I do. Micah, what's going on? Good to see you, man. Just want to catch up in the comment section. I'm not going to be able to do it all the way through. Hi, Scholar, what's up? All the way through the show. So, I want to get some greetings in as I can. What's up, Dr. Thunder? Peace to you, man. Hope you're well. So yeah, anyway, so let's kind of continue here. He says, I believe there needs to be a new wave of culinary education in the country because students want to acquire the skills to start their careers right away without having to acquire a lot of debt. Traditional schools charge $35,000 to $100,000 for a culinary degree. With that kind of debt, are you ever going to be able to pursue your career fully or just work to pay back loans? I want to help people break through that invisible ceiling they have, which may be because of circumstances or socioeconomic backgrounds. I want everyone to have access to education that can help them advance. Currently, tuition at the Schuler Institute is below $15,000, and we work with corporations to get scholarships. But our goal is eventually to be 100% tuition free. I could have gone on and continued to open more restaurants, but I wanted to leave a legacy. I love giving and I love mentoring. I can relate to many people in the food service industry and want to show them that I rose above my background and got to this point so they can too. It is my responsibility to advance historically excluded populations and funnel more diverse candidates in the industry. Now, this is tight. This is tight. And I appreciate this work. But I want to show you something. When we talk about, what's up, Javon? Hope you're well. When we talk about Black men, stepping out, trying to help those below them, those who haven't gotten where they've gotten to yet. Notice that very, very, little of the time are these brothers setting up programs just for other Black males. Right? No one appreciate that support, man. Very rarely. He didn't set up this culinary institute just for other Black males. Now, I would have hoped he would have, but that's not who he did it for, right? That's not who he did it for. What's up, Golden Child? He did it for, students who are underrepresented. So in other words, we tend to do it for a lot of different groups. But often, and you'll see later tonight what I'm talking about, when we see programs that are spearheaded, often by key demographics in the Black community, Black boys, Black men aren't even an afterthought. So as much as I appreciate and applaud what this brother's doing, we actually need targeted support for Black males. And even when Black males initiate programs like this, we try to help everybody. But we won't target just Black males. We won't. But I can tell you this much. Other demographics in the Black community have no problem targeting everyone in the community but Black males. So anyway, shout this brother out nevertheless, right? Next one up, I got to acknowledge Colin Kaepernick. This is from a piece that you can find on thehill.com. And let's see if this is going to, there we go. This is entitled, so this came out today. Kaepernick launches initiative to offer autopsies in police-related deaths. That's deep. That is deep. Kaepernick launches initiative to offer autopsies in police-related deaths. Let me see if I can enlarge this a little bit. I know for many of you that isn't going to help, but I will go through it nevertheless. All right, so former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick has launched an initiative to offer free second autopsies in police-related deaths. Offered through his Know Your Rights Camp organization, Kaepernick's autopsy initiative includes a team of board-certified pathologists who will perform autopsies, disclose preliminary findings, and issue final autopsy reports. Autopsies may be requested through the initiative by the spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer of a person whose death is police-related and must be authorized by a legal representative. The initiative aims to alleviate concerns that a first autopsy conducted in police-related deaths may not be reliable or objective, that evidence may be manipulated, that bias may impact the coroner or medical examiner conducting the autopsy, or that faulty forensic procedures may be used, according to the Know Your Rights Camp website. We know that the prison industrial complex, which includes police and policing, strives to protect and serve its interests at all costs, Kaepernick said, according to the Associated Press. The autopsy initiative is one important step toward ensuring that family members have access to accurate and forensically verifiable information about the cause of death of their loved one in their time of need. This comes after Kaepernick then the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, sparked controversy in 2016 by kneeling during the national anthem at multiple games to raise awareness of police brutality and racial inequality. I'm passionate about the initiative's impact and look forward to being a resource to victims' family members who have lost their loved ones due to police-related death, Autopsy Initiative Program Manager Nicole Martin said in a statement. Now, as happy as I am to see a resource to families that are questioning the results of an autopsy, I'm happy that they have, another resource. Sad that it'll be necessary, and based on the data, it will continue to be. But at the same time, as much as, again, Kaepernick is supporting this initiative, and I'm glad to see he is, it's not targeted directly to Black men. That tends to be something that I think will, on the back end help in these such situations, or at least it has the potential to. But notice how Black males are not directly acknowledged or targeted. This is no slight at Kaepernick, right? Or the chef from the previous article, but I'm just kind of putting this in your head. Notice when you see these kind of cases, Black men are advocating for all kinds of groups. And under the table, they might have an eye directed at other Black males, right? I'm not saying they don't. I'm not questioning their dedication. I'm not questioning their motives. I'm applauding what they're doing. But I am observing the extent to which we don't necessarily do that. We don't target our own demographic the way others do, unapologetically, in fact. Right? So, something to consider as we continue to go along tonight. Okay, Villain Von Doom says he's right. He went to the Institute back in 2011. I'm now just paying off debt, and I feel like I never learned much at school. Totally outdated curriculum. I hear you. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Just kind of catch up a little bit with some of this. Yeah, Eastmood the God says, I went to the Austin Culinary School of Arts after college. And let me tell you, the culinary fine dining industry is one of the most prejudiced places one could be, especially here in Murderopolis. Damn. Mm-hmm. Brother Todd Muhammad, what's up to you? He says, as of now, Black men must know, understand, and use the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. I use the 14th Amendment to avoid becoming another statistic of the prison industrial system. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. So, shout out to those two brothers, and we'll keep it in mind as we move forward. So, what am I talking about tonight? Well, I wanted to look at the ways that policy enhances the gulf between Black men and women. Now, why am I saying that? Now, on this show, oh, no. My bad. There's one other thing we've got to do, a quick little public service announcement. This was a last minute edition, but I thought it important. So before we jump in the show, let me just say this public service announcement. This is Nick Center Mitchell Robinson III. And he posted on his social media that his father, 39-year-old Mitchell Robinson Jr., is missing and was last seen in Pensacola, Florida on February 11th. Right? Not sure if, since I've seen this earlier, if there's been any movement in the case, but I thought I would do my part to help spread the word. So apparently this is an issue on the table. I hope you will do the same, share it, and help this brother actually find his father. Right? Says Robinson posted to social media to contact the phone number 850-436-9620 if you've seen his missing father, 39-year-old Mitchell Robinson Jr. So shout out to the Robinson family. I hope this is resolved quickly, and I hope the results are positive. Yeah, I thought that too. 39 is interesting, but it's not impossible in the Black communities. Anyway, I ain't gonna say nothing else. But anyway, all right. So, how policy enhances the gulf between Black men and women. Now, I've been talking about this for the last couple of years. been looking at policy. It's one thing to talk about relationship issues. It's another thing to talk about the individual things that, Black women do that don't make the media. There's never been a point in time where Black men haven't been held under scrutiny. We haven't been critiqued publicly. That's not gone anywhere. But, there's been a need in many ways for Black men to come forward to talk about their experiences. And I'm all for it. I support it. My role in it is I'm not a relationship counselor. That's not the area I deal with. I've had most of the relationship experiences we talk about, but that's not my area. What I'm interested in are the ways that the structural aspects of our environment shape many of these things, right? I'm interested in looking at policy, practices, media, hiring, you name it. I'm interested in looking at how our environment plays a role in every capacity, from employment to education to media to law. How do these things shape the way we act, the way we think, the way we conceptualize our relationships to each other in the Black community? Those are more the things I'm interested in. Now, I'm not going to do an exhaustive MLR. Appreciate that support, good brother. Thank you. MLR always be coming through, so much appreciated, good brother. Hope some of you will follow suit and support. Now, I'm not going to do an exhaustive breakdown because we've done this. We've been talking about this for 2 years. Those of you who've been rocking with me know that we've been doing this for a while. But I'm just going to, put up a couple of things that are fairly new to look at. And we're going to examine how they play into, how we understand Black men and women. What differences are being supported and really in many ways exacerbated by the structural reality we live in. So that being said, let me kind of jump in here. Right now, I talked in the past about what I called a form of social gentrification. And by that, I meant you actually have a wide variety of practices that are, many ways backed by the state that separate Black men and women. And critically, we actually can say that there is a different quality of life between both groups, an entirely different quality of life, a different relationship to resources, to the state, to NGOs and private companies who decide to invest in various ways. One of the things when we started this conversation on my show, it really came out of the pandemic. And one of the first things we were looking at we were seeing all kinds of advertisements for support, right? For entrepreneurs and finding ways to support mom and pop businesses. And then we started to see, there were options available for Black businesses. And then we started to see, options available primarily to Black women. I've yet to find one since 2020 that's been put on the table for Black men. Not one. But then that gave way to a whole different level of support, right? Non-governmental organizations, private companies, philanthropists coming forward, corporate philanthropy at that, right? From Goldman Sachs to MasterCard, Google, Visa, all these programs. And I've done long shows, short shows, just alerting us to new ones, right? Then there was a whole wave of city-based programs that were designed around helping single mothers, right? There was a whole kind of framework nationally, right, that was put forward suggesting that we are living in a she economy, right? And there's a she session going on where women are finding themselves homeless and struggling in record numbers. And I pointed out many a time, this is only something that can be said when you've completely ignored the status of Black men in particular before the pandemic even started. Right? Rates of homelessness, rates of unemployment were ridiculously high before the pandemic. And then somehow magically, there's this kind of sense by ignoring Black men altogether, we're going to subtly suggest that they're doing well enough that they don't need to be mentioned. So we need to talk about this she session. We need to talk about, and here's the thing, I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to women getting help. I grew up under a single mother and we were on Section 8. I'm not saying women shouldn't get help. What I am saying, however, is how many men have been completely ignored by this conversation. And how many groups, even within the Black community, have no problem with that? None. In other groups, if you're going to advocate for one gender, that gender being advocated for might protest the fact that you've completely ignored the other. Why? Because at the end of the day, if you have two resources, it's that much better for the family. Our community is a little different. Nobody says a goddamn word when Black men are not acknowledged at all. Nobody has a problem with it. If anything, Black men tend to be seen as an impediment. And we know why. We know where this comes from. Right? We've talked about this ad nauseum. When you really deal with the origins of state-supported families, a lot of this began with the underlying idea that you can only get that support if men are absent. And even though the formal policies behind that, the man in the house rule as an example, are no longer technically at play, legally speaking, the practices are still being practiced. Men are still being denied assistance. It is what it is. And in that, we've not been socialized to even consider assistance because we're so used to not getting it. Our fathers are used to not getting it. Our grandfathers are used to not getting it. It's not a part of our makeup to even consider it. But that is a little different for other demographics who've become quite used to getting support, especially at the expense of a male presence. And so doing, we find ourselves in a very different position. Right? A position where men over generations, Black men, tend to be viewed as an impediment to resources. They're an impediment to social access. I mean, hell, I talked about it just a few months ago. We've actually seen it get to a point where through Section 8, you can actually purchase homes at this point. This is not something that Black men tend to have access to, especially to the same degree as Black women. So let's look at a couple of programs. I'm just going to point out two that add to this mix. So again, I've already talked about the various waves of support that we're just now identifying. We've been looking at welfare for generations. And that, of course, is we're talking about a variety of programs, really, not just one. Everything from help with your utilities to food to WIC, all of that. And then we can talk about access to education, particularly if you're talking about higher education, which depends on K through 12 performance. But then we can also look at, these kind of entrepreneur-based programs. We can look at these city-based programs, only identifying single mothers of need. And I am a single father. Ain't nobody offered me a goddamn dime. That aside, we're going to look at, let me see here, this first one. Nope. There we go. Let me resize it a bit. So this is an article you can find on NBCnews.com. It's entitled Paying Ransom for Freedom, How Cash Bail is Keeping Black Mothers Stuck in Prisons. Many women in jail are Black single mothers who are awaiting trial there only because they can't afford bail. But groups across the U.S. are posting bonds on their behalf. Yeah. Interesting. Hold on one second. Trying to keep my phone from acting a fool. Aquatechie, appreciate the Cash App. Revelator, you as well. Thank you. Again, support the channel, y'all. Greg, appreciate the support. Thank you. Yeah. So here you have an image. Black woman and child. Right? Taylor Bates and her baby are healthy and at home after having spent a month in jail because she couldn't afford the $1,000 bail. This is dated February 13th. It says in December, Jakari Letchaw's dog wandered to a neighbor's house where it gave birth to puppies. Letchaw says when she tried to retrieve her dog and the puppies, a dispute broke out over who was the rightful owner of the puppies. She walked away, but later that night, the Black single mother of 5 was arrested and eventually sent to Jefferson County's jail in Birmingham, Alabama. Her bail was set at $60,000 for a first-degree robbery charge. It was far more than she could afford. Her most recent job had paid only $14 an hour. The monetary difference meant Letchaw, I don't know how to pronounce that, would have had to wait in jail until her trial started, which could have been months away. I absolutely had no idea how I was going to pay my bail. There was no way possible. Sitting in there, I even lost my job. Now, this is interesting. Again, I'm not opposed to this sister getting help at all. At all. But here's the thing. From 2012 to now, you've seen a wave of incarceration where the logistics of it tend to still find that, men are far more incarcerated than women. At one point in time, early part of the, post 2010s, there was about 2.2 million men incarcerated, about 200,000 women, roughly, right? In terms of black folk, early part of 2012, you were dealing with almost 950,000 incarcerated black men and about 65,000 black women. Now, those numbers have both dropped since then. Men are in the 700 so thousand range, but as Antonio Morris pointed out, it's not necessarily because fewer of them are being incarcerated. It has more to do with the fact that many of them are being sent home on ankle bracelets. Jason, appreciate that support. Thank you. They're on, they have ankle bracelets. Being incarcerated at home, and those services you have to pay for out of pocket. So you actually have ancillary programs that are tied into the prison industrial complex that the prisoners themselves have to pay for. This is a money business. This isn't about justice. This isn't about law. Everybody commits crimes. There are only certain groups that are focused upon to a greater degree, arrested and sentenced, to the point where we have narratives about only black men commit crime. There's a basic kind of sensibility out there that this is somehow true. But really, that's not what it is. Everybody commits crimes. Black men are assumed to be guilty simply because they exist. And this becomes a reality if you've ever been thrown over the hot hood of a police car simply because you were standing there. And this has been happening. It happened to me going back to middle school. I remember that. Standing in line to see movies. That was back when, lines for movies would be outside around the corner no matter the weather. Cops would roll up on me and my boy, the only two black folk there. Throw us on the ground, handcuff us, ask us questions, all that kind of shit. You grow up in an environment like that, you don't take none of this light and you don't assume any of it because you know how easily you can be subject to it. And when we factor in that those exonerated, over 50% of them are black males, exonerated especially by DNA evidence, they're black males because of how easy this process is. Well, again, when you look at the ratio of men to women in the black community, especially that are incarcerated, I have not seen this kind of program or this kind of idea being offered to black men, especially black men who are either innocent or simply can't afford to get out before their trial and have responsibilities. I told this story a couple of years ago. Back in 2015, I had attended a number of protests, marches, so on and so forth. And one of the things I noticed is, I had talked to this brother after one march I went to in Southern California. I was driving back up to Fresno, stopped to get some gas. And this brother was getting some gas. And I said, hey, man, have you been participating in any of the protests? And he looked at me, he said, shit, man. He said, I got warrants. And before I could think of it, I realized I had warrants. I had a warrant for a speeding ticket that I couldn't afford to pay at the time I got it. So it became a warrant. And here I am at a protest. And at any point, I could have been locked up, whatever. But one of the things I found with black men who find themselves locked up is that they end up spending more time than they plan to. And it's probably one of the reasons that it's not a huge strategy with black men to do that. I met a lot of different groups, different people that'll say shit like, yeah, I'm going to a protest. I'm going to get arrested, in support of this program, or support of this, thing we're protesting for. I'm going to go get arrested. And then, and I've heard sisters do this. And then I'll get, then later tonight, I'll cook dinner for the kids. And then I'll go do that. And by the way, that I'm paraphrasing a real conversation that I've had with an individual. This is not just abstract. And I'm looking at it like I've known brothers that went in for a speeding ticket, and ended up having to stay a weekend, a week, a month, a couple of months, hell, even just defending themselves once they were inside. Just as this sister is talking about losing jobs, losing apartments, losing houses, losing family, all behind an arbitrary arrest. And the time it took between when they were arrested And hell, by the end, we're not even talking about trials. We're just talking about basic level issues that people should be able to get out on. They couldn't afford bail. But some of them, yeah, couldn't afford to wait until a trial because they had responsibilities. Kids going into child protective services because they're locked up over arbitrary charges. We don't even associate these things with black men. We don't. Most people look at it and say, well, he's a black man, he needs to be in jail. That's it. But we see here a push for empathy for this woman who is a mother of children, as if black men have no children. It's interesting. But again, I'm not saying she shouldn't get that support. That is not my argument. I'm simply saying we have not heard this basic level of empathy push to black men who are incarcerated to far greater degrees. And we don't even have to be talking about violent crimes. We can talk about non-violent crimes. It doesn't matter. This basic level of empathy is not extended to black men. And the first time we hear about it, that's, I'm, if we were going to create a parallel of sorts, I don't know. Let's say if you take HIV, take AIDS, right? And we're going to talk about, because, they're talking about right now how they've developed a cure. And there have been, I think, about 3 people who've been cured from it. But I'm not addressing that. I'm just saying, for argument's sake, it's like we're going to take AIDS. And if we were going to say the population of, say, I don't know, children under the age of 5 with AIDS, or we're going to target a population of, oh goodness, you name it, Jewish women over the age of 85 with AIDS. We're gonna start there, right? We're gonna target Jewish women over 85 with AIDS, and they're gonna be the first ones to get access to this cure. It's like, okay, did anybody look at the data? Because maybe the group you should start with are those that are suffering from it the most. Maybe that would be a reasonable place to start. If you're going to actually start a program that's designed to help people that experience something to a great degree, maybe you should start with those who are actually experiencing it, to a great degree. No. So it says her bail was set at $60,000 for a first-degree robbery charge. It was far more than she could afford. Most recent job paid only $14 an hour. A lot of brothers ain't even employed. I've talked about this before. Leading into the pandemic in over 35 major cities, 40 to 50% of black males were unemployed. So if you're unemployed and arbitrarily arrested and can't afford your bail, there's nothing for you. Monetary difference meant LaChaw would have to wait in jail until her trial started, which could be months away. I absolutely had no idea how I was going to pay bail, she says. Let's skip ahead a little. She almost lost her house while awaiting trial in jail for 2 weeks. She was only able to return home after a local social justice organization, Faith and Works, posted her bail on Christmas Day through its fund in defense of Black lives. The group has a relationship with Birmingham Sheriff's Department, which referred her case. I wonder if sheriff departments are volunteering black men programs like this. Anyway, the child recalled that when representatives from In Defense of Black Lives first approached her and offered to bail her out, she immediately thought, bail who out? That kind of thing just doesn't happen very often. Exactly. There was nothing else I could do. There was absolutely nothing else. And when I hear Faith and Works, they want to come and bail me out, I'm crying. I think I almost went into a panic attack. Right? So you see the little banner there. I assume those are her children. Let's see if there's, youngest 3 kids. Met her at the Jefferson County Jail in Birmingham, Alabama to welcome her home the day she was released. Money kept you in, black love got you out. Hashtag free black mamas. Hashtag end money bails. End money bail, excuse me. In defense of Black lives, bomb bail fund. Hashtag free black mamas. Yeah, man. A lot of 85-year-old Jewish women suffering from AIDS. We gotta target them. They need to be first. Anyway, Most women in jail are like LaChaw, Black single mothers, or only incarcerated because they can't afford to post bail. Of the more than 115,000 women in jails in the U.S., more than 60% haven't been convicted of a crime, but are incarcerated while awaiting trial because they can't make bail. According to the Sentencing Project, 44% of women in jail are Black, and 80% of women are single mothers or primary caregivers for their children, according to a 2016 report by Vera Institute of Justice. These disparities are among the many reasons why advocates say the cash bail system is long overdue for reform, if not abolishment. Right? Paying ransom for freedom. Kara McClure founded Faith and Works in 2017 and its bail fund 3 years later, which is specifically dedicated to bailing out Black mothers. She said the cash bail system criminalizes poverty while rewarding wealth. Now, see, here's the thing. This is another thing I said. When we started hearing from Goldman Sachs, when we started hearing from Google and MasterCard, all these programs started coming out, what I started to tell people is what we are actually seeing is usually educated Black women, right, who are working in white-collar environments and solipsistically focusing on just their own demographic, right? This is the same group you saw go to Ferguson, right, in regard to the advent, or really not the advent, but the mass, publicizing of Black Lives Matter. It's the same group. But the difference, though, is that they were targeting an issue around Black male death, which seemingly on the surface looks like it's about Black males. But I posted before the articles written by there was an article by that addressed one of the founders of BLM, and she made it very explicit. BLM is for Black women. That's it. So in other words, they targeted issues that were Black male centric because, when you see a Black male damn near killed on camera, everybody's attention is on that. But what they were doing really wasn't about Black males. It was really a bait and switch that had more to do with transferring the attention to issues that they felt that the attention should go to. But now we're at another stage of it, where you have white collar, educated Black women who are working in environments where they can leverage resources within the environments they're in for themselves. This is the kind of example, and it's such a consistent kind of practice. Again, I've said this for years. I've known people, right, who are white collar, and through their work will help create Black Girl Rocks organizations, Black Girl Empowerment, Black Women Empowerment. They'll create businesses that only sell to Black women and girls, all of that, and have sons at home. No daughters, sons. Strung out, some of them. Homeless, some of them. Struggling in school. Having difficulty, unemployed. And I'm not saying these are all Black males, but this is all Black males across the board. No, I'm saying that I've met many of these mothers who can go to work in one vein and advocate for Black women and girls only, come home to sons and see no connection between the two. When you have that degree of solipsistic framework going on, it's not surprising to me that you actually can see high-level corporations starting to invest. So when we talk about this Faith and Works program, I'm not at all surprised that this is led by a woman named Kara McClure. And somehow the idea is that, Black males overlook and dismiss everybody else. They only focus on themselves. They're selfish. There's a degree of epistemological jealousy going on, even in the academy, about who gets attention for what. Black men getting killed gets attention as long as it's on camera. We know that because most of us can only remember 1 or 2, 3 at best, Black men who've been killed by police every year. Usually it's around 1 or 2. Usually if you ask them, we're referencing someone that died 3 years ago, but the numbers, 200 to 300 a year, we can ignore hundreds of Black male deaths per year and we're oblivious, right? So it's not surprising to see this because I think this is the kind of thing that's happening. Even the city-based programs I was talking about earlier that target single mothers in terms of giving them cash every month, Usually when you look at those who are implementing those programs from within city jobs, Black women. The solipsism is deep. The degree to which they see the world strictly in terms of only other Black women. This is one of the difficulties that Black men and women are having. And this is one of the things that led me to tonight's show. When we talk about the ways policy enhances the gulf between Black men and women. When you advocate policy, but you only do so for your demographic, but there's still an expectation that Black men, to prove their dedication to the community, still have to create for everybody. So, and this is not even something I planned. If we look at those first two brothers I talked about earlier, whether you're talking about Colin Kaepernick or whether you're talking about the chef Daryl Schuler, they didn't create programs for Black boys and men. They didn't create Black Boy Joy or Black Boy Magic programs. They created programs to help the underrepresented. And if you walked into those facilities, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw mostly Black folk being helped, even though that doesn't even seem to be the letter of, what they're committed to doing with those programs. But I also will bet you will not see a majority of males being the target. I would love to be wrong, but I don't think so. Yet, program after program after program that we hear about, boys and men are not even mentioned. And understand, this doesn't even just have to be an abstract issue with boys and men, right? What's up, BGS? It has more to do with, we have relationships. This is why I said, when you're talking about these women in positions like this, they have sons, husbands, boyfriends, fathers, nephews, brothers. No. Even during the pandemic, when brothers were coming onto the show talking about the various pandemic-related resources they had to apply to get support for their entrepreneurial businesses, many of them talked about using a Black female face as the face of their company, just to get support. This is where we are. But there's no place where we can talk about this. Nobody wants to have that discussion. So anyway, it continues. Paying ransom for freedom is something that goes way back historically, she said. Let's just say, for instance, me and you committed the same crime. You have money. I don't have money. You get to go home and I have to sit there. And I just don't understand me sitting there. Right. But does she understand her brother that has to sit there much longer either way? And then on top of that, we know that women are sentenced 65% less for the same sentences, for the same crimes as men, especially Black men. Are we talking about how these programs could be useful to Black men along those lines? No. According to the Vera report, poverty is a key reason many people commit crimes. 60% of women in jail didn't have full-time jobs before being arrested, and the majority of women in jail are there for low-level nonviolent crimes such as poverty, drug, or public order offenses. While local, state, and federal governments have been slow to overhaul the cash bail system, many organizations across the country, such as Faith and Works, are stepping up to bail people out for low-level nonviolent offenses. Right? I'm not going to go into all of this, but I will post the link. Tell you what, I will put it in the comments on YouTube. So for those on Facebook, you have to get it in the description box once I'm done with the show. Also, I am broadcasting tonight on innerlightradio.com. So shout out to Innerlight. You can go there and listen to the show as well. Black owned. So props to Brother Jamal. Anyway, but as I said, I will put the link in the description box after the show. You can go through it with more detail on your own time if you'd so like. All right, a lot of useful information in here. Disproportionate impact on Black women. The Bail Project, the National Fund, has posted bonds for more than 20,000 people across the U.S. 76% were women, and of that group, 1 in 3 were Black mothers. So they posted bond for 20,000 people. 76% were women. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm trying to regain my composure. Try something here. Oh crap. Wait a minute. Okay, that is not. All right, let me try it over here. There we go. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but no, you can't. What I just did is I ran a search in the article to see if black men were even mentioned once. It says 0 out of 0. Not once. 20,000 people helped across the U.S. 76% were women. But if I say that programs are systematically ignoring black men and boys, that's the problem. That's the problem. That's offensive. That is sexist. That is misogynist. That's the big problem, right? That I said it. Not that it's happening, and not that there's a reason that black males need far more support they do. We're going to ignore all of that. We're going to ignore the fact that they get arrested more often for crimes that everybody commits. We're going to ignore the fact that there's more brothers in this situation than there have ever been women. Ever. Hell, up to a few years ago, there were more incarcerated black men here than women around the entire earth. Shout out again to Antonio Moore. More black men incarcerated in the U.S. than all women in the world. And when you create a program to help people with bail so they can get back to supporting their families, you help an extremely small demographic. This is fucking ridiculous. But this is what I mean when I say that we're really witnessing the era of the buffer class. We have a new era of buffer class, of a buffer class group in the black community that's been really being cultivated over the last few generations. We can go back to the 1960s. We can go before that, but I'm talking about this latest era. From the 1960s onward, you have a demographic in the black community that is becoming accustomed to reaching out for support and getting it, right? By the time you get to the 1980s, that transitions to a greater emphasis on education, greater access to higher education, greater access, especially through affirmative action, which we've already talked about on the show very recently, looking at a number of critical papers that targeted both white and black women and excluded, in many respects, black men. Because with white women, they became the primary minority by the time affirmative action really got some wind in its sails. Black women can be counted as double minorities. And it's interesting how little documentation, you might find on double minority status. But shout out to Derek Bell, prestigious law professor at Harvard, who has since passed away. He talked about it. Not a whole lot of others publicly, but nevertheless, double minority status ensured that black women got some kind of priority in terms of being able to be hired in corporate spaces. Black men, no. Then you hit the drug era, the war on drugs, mid-70s onward. Happening at the same time, you have deindustrialization, right? Limited jobs, limited access, most particularly for black men who worked blue-collar jobs, especially after the 40s, right? Blue-collar jobs that guaranteed the black family, especially in the North, the Midwest, the West Coast, a modicum of economic stability until that was wiped off the map. Then you had a slew of just massive unemployment, especially, again, for black men. Because in the 70s, the 60s, and really, you can go back to the 40s, black women always had access to at least domestic labor. Right? And then by the time you had the rise of feminism, they could transition that labor into low-level clerical. They can get college degrees, and then got to transition into, again, different aspects of lower-level white-collar employment. Black men saw a whole different road, and nobody gave a fuck. That's the problem I have. Nobody cared. This ain't new, but it is reaching a whole new level. It is reaching a whole new level. So by the time we get to the Great Recession, 2007, 2008, right? Black community, still the only community that has not recouped from the recession. And we start to see a bevy of programs coming out, targeting people for training, education, especially in tech. And they're very specific about who they're taking. And it is not black men. And it damn sure isn't black boys who are considered irrelevant by elementary school. How is it that you have the most enrolled demographic in higher education in the very same community with black men who, at least in the California State University system, by their first year are dropping out at a rate of 70%? How the fuck does that make any sense? Tell me. And nobody cares. The only issue that we have with it, not enough dating and marrying options for black women. Really? That's the problem? All the things we could be talking about, from employment to access to resources, access to institutional support. No, the biggest problem we have with black men not being in the kind of positions that other groups are in is that they don't provide the type of marrying options that black women don't like. There's not enough parity, right? That's the problem. And that's been something we've been hearing since the 1980s, but nobody wants to talk about the actual issue at hand. Black men's employment options in the 60s and 70s was blue collar. And in many ways, it still is. But when there were massive cuts to blue collar labor access, nobody gave a damn about how that impacted black males. But even to this day, we say, well, I hear a lot of brothers say, well, we don't need college anyway. We do better doing blue collar work. Fair enough. I don't have a problem with that. Then every now and again, I get some blue collar brothers that will start to talk about the way in which there's a similar exclusion that takes place on different terms in a blue collar environment. I think it was about 6-7 months ago. I was talking in the comment section with some brothers, and we were looking at electrician work and that kind of labor. And the brother started to talk about, I know what it was. It was when the good brother passed away. Oh my God. I know BGS remembers his name, but the brother who passed away, we did a show on it. And this is no reflection on him. My memory is, I've been a little spread thin lately, so I do apologize to his family. But those of you in the comment section, help me out. The brother, he had a YouTube, he had a YouTube show. Force Windu. Thank you, BGS. My apologies to Force Windu's family. Just a brief moment on my part, not remembering him. I don't mean to suggest that he's not valued. Brothers still acknowledge him. If you look closely at my, the little video I play in support of my subscribers, he's listed in there in red. I know Gigi acknowledges him every show. And hell, BGS started Shatterpoint, if I remember correctly, and he can correct me, in somewhat honor of Force Windu. So the brothers still remember. We still appreciate him. But it was then, because I was talking to his wife, and we did a show honoring Force Windu after he committed suicide. And one thing we talked about was the difficulty he had. He was saying he actually got more work when he was still apprenticing than he did when he finished. I think it was an electrician work. And then he talked about the ways, or his wife, I should say, talked about the ways that he was excluded from being able to build his business once he got certified or whatever. Right? And so brothers will come up and really start talking into, absolutely, Malika, Force Windu, gone but not forgotten. Real talk. So anyway, I'm saying that to say there is no space whatsoever where black men are completely sheltered from this type of exclusion and bias. We can argue and debate back and forth as to which, fields, which types of labor are more dependable. But the reality is we tend to be playing a game of hot foot. We hop from one foot to the other, trying to find a space where we can have some regular employment. Consistent, stable, and dependable. And yet, yes, employed black men still earn more than black women, mainly based on hours worked. Still, which is pretty much consistent across gender as far as men and women are concerned. Men tend to work more hours, even when you control for childbirth. Got an article we can talk about. If you remind me, I'll do an individual live on that this week. But yeah, some of the latest research on it still suggests men tend to work more hours. That's still the case in Black America. Problem, however, is not those. It's not about employed Black men. It's about unemployed Black men, or Black men who have just been so out of it they're not even looking for employment, and they're not considered unemployed. Right? You know, Charles says yes. The brother was an electrician. The local electrician union in Philadelphia is very racist. A lot of times, the brothers in the union are always told off. That's real. So if you're going to talk about blue collar work versus white collar work, let's talk about both sides of both. Yeah, Kiel, I talked about that earlier. The rise in Black male suicide. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is why Black suicide rates are going up. These are the stressors. These are the issues that cause that. Lack of access to stability and security. And of course, based on the social expectations of men, a lack of access to be able to provide that. It's not always a matter of drive. It's not always a matter, man. Anyway, let's look at a second one. Second article. Jerron, appreciate that support, good brother. Right? Look at another piece. And I keep doing that. Let's go here. All right. This one's interesting. This one is entitled, Even Divorce Might Not Free You from Your Ex's Student Loan Debt. This is written February 8th, 2022. Right? Even divorce might not free you from your ex's student loan debt. You can find this on npr.org. Right? Now, immediately, that's interesting because if you just look at the title, right? Even divorce might not free you from your ex's student loan debt. The first one you see on here is a Black woman. Right? Not wearing any fancy clothes. It just looks like an everyday, blue collar system. Subtitle to the picture reads, Angela Powell, a business analyst in Texas, has been trying to untangle a joint consolidation loan from her ex-husband since their divorce in 2014. Powell's ex-husband stopped regularly paying on the loan years ago. Already, this is targeted in a very anti-Black male framework. Because assuredly, you're not going to tell me that out of divorced couples, Black men don't suffer from student loan debt issues. Now, I'll be the first one to say, yeah, Black women have greater amounts of student loan debt. But in terms of being a married couple who've consolidated your debt, yeah, Black men deal with this issue. But let's go into it. Angela Powell met her prince, right? Because it's not a dig at men at all, right? It's not a dig. She met her prince during her freshman year of college. She had dreams of a happy marriage, a successful career, and a couple of great kids. After graduation, she got married and started on the two, attending business school while her husband got his law degree before the two settled down to start a family in Arizona. Around that time, they decided to consolidate their loans under a new Department of Education program for married couples. The perks were high, low interest rate for their debt, and only one payment to worry about per month. I didn't think it was a real big deal because we're going to pay all this off. We're going to be married forever, right? Powell said. Fast forward to the housing market crisis in 2009, 2010. Not a happy marriage anymore. Everybody loses their jobs. Now, this is important. It is important to see the relationship between income, home ownership, and marriage and divorce. That, I applaud that. Because a lot of times we talk about marriage and divorce as this isolated, kind of thing. It's very much tied. You see divorce rates go up, particularly among poorer populations that are grappling with issues. They are more vulnerable to market issues. Absolutely. Absolutely. After the divorce, Powell's relationship with her ex soured. No shit. Documents reviewed by NPR show that he has not made regular payments to the loan since 2016. That's despite the fact he'd originally taken out almost double her debt. Framing her as a victim already. Interesting. Through consolidation, they are now on the hook together for nearly $200,000, more than 5 times the amount of Powell's initial loan. See, the thing about it is, I'm all for talking about the statistics around these issues, but it's when they try and choose these individual cases that you really start to see the misandry set in. and the extent to which they can target men, black men in particular, in a very particular way. And here's the thing, there's no evidence that he's black, but we know just with the image here, we're going to associate it with black men, even if he weren't. We're not even going to talk about the fact that it's black men that marry black women to the highest degrees, because somehow that just seems to get forgotten anyway. But I'm stuck with having this thing on my back, says Powell, and knowing that at the end of the day, if he chooses not to pay, guess what? My monthly payment is $1,942.50. Chooses not to pay. That's interesting. Chooses not to pay. Mr. Donnie Mack says, I paid off mine. 2 different black women asked if I'll now stop dating black women with student loan debt. This is deep. Yeah, 2 black women asked if I'll now stop dating women because of student loan. That's hilarious. I'm sorry. That caught me off guard, Donnie. Anyway, more than 14,000 borrowers participated in the short-lived program, which Congress shuttered in 2006. It seemed like a simple concept. Joint consolidation loans allowed for couples to have one single monthly payment with a lower interest rate. The problem came when trying to separate loans in the case of divorce or domestic violence. See where this is going? You see it? See where it's going? It started out with just a picture of a black woman. You know, it was talking about divorce, talking about student loans, could have been anybody. Picture of a black woman. Then a picture of a man who disappointed her and just volunteered, or I should say, stopped volunteering payments just arbitrarily. There's no reason. He just did it to be cruel. We don't know if the man's unemployed. We don't know anything, but that's okay. He's a black male. He probably did it on purpose. He was just trying to hurt her. But then in this one sentence, you already see a pivot in the article that goes into a trope about black men that is very interesting, right? So the domestic problem came when trying to separate loans in the case of divorce or domestic violence. The program has no way to disentangle the debt. Seems pretty straightforward. If you can put something together, you can take it apart, says Patrick Stebley. He has been in this situation since his divorce in 2013 and has spent the last 5 years trying to change it for everyone else. Stebley's advocacy has inspired legislation to remedy this problem. Introduced by Sean Mark Warner, Democrat in Virginia, and Representative David E. Price, Democrat in North Carolina, I guess that is, the bill would allow, in cases of divorce or domestic violence, for joint loans to be split proportionately based on the original loan amounts. Nearly half a dozen families in this situation told NPR this is the fix they need. Word. Okay, let's continue. They mentioned somebody named Patrick Stebley. Mentioned him. Next picture up, a black woman. Holly Rodriguez found herself responsible for both her and her ex-husband's student loans. Ridiculous. All right. Warner first introduced the bill in 2017 after a constituent reached out about paying her abusive ex-husband's student loans. There we go. There we go. Abusive. See? We went from a range of possibly irresponsible to vindictively unwilling to help with payments. He just stopped, just willy-nilly. There was no reason behind it. And then we started to hear, we saw the word domestic violence just dropped in there. Now, abusive ex-husband. Interesting. What's up, South Shaolin? Good to see you in here. So let's continue. Warner first introduced the bill in 2017 after a constituent reached out about paying her abusive ex-husband's student loans. She had moved from Florida to Virginia to get away from him. Shit. Here we go. Right? We are already dealing with the chase narrative, right? Where you got to deal with stalking, abusive ex-husbands. And there's plenty of data to suggest that men are far from the only ones stalking women. Stalking dynamic does not go both ways, although it's actually a very complicated issue because it goes into cultural definitions of stalking against gender and sex roles in relationships. And you'd be surprised how confusing that can get. Point is, they're relying on a trope that we've all become accustomed to being something men do to women and continuing to ignore the data on otherwise. And we're going to see that they've done the same thing when it comes to abuse. But let's continue. While she physically got away, she couldn't get away from this mutual debt from an abusive husband. That's just wrong, said Warner. Now, you didn't look at this picture. You're going to tell me what group do we immediately assume is abusing her? And by extension, Black women as a whole. And this is one of the things that we've heard in the rebuttal to Tina Knowles Lawson's documentary. Black men, and I've been hearing this for years, are killing Black women en masse. Far more than any other group killing their women. Word. Well, if you do the data, you'll find that the reverse is true as well. Black women are killing men to greater degrees than other groups of women are killing their men. That doesn't make the papers, though. But what else doesn't make the papers is that the number of, now when you talk about police homicide in the Black community, 200 to 300 men die per year. It's about 9 to 13 women, right? When you talk about intimate partner homicide in the Black community, depending on the year you're looking at, because we're still waiting for more states to report, but up to a number of years ago, you'd have an average of anywhere from 175 to 250 Black women being killed and an average of 50 to 70 fewer men. That's very different from the stats on police homicide, where it's 200 to 300 men, 9 to 13 women. There, you might have a year where you have 250 women killed, 190 Black men killed out of 43 million. See, those are the numbers behind how people play with these ideas. Right? And if you check Shay Shardae's channel, shout out to her. She did a beautiful job responding the other day to the kind of issues that were said to be cited from the FBI about intimate partner homicide in regard to the Black community. And what she pointed out is a great number of those deaths are inconclusive in terms of who's initiating them. And they've just been arbitrarily assigned to Black men. Go check out her video on that. Shay Shardae here on YouTube. Doing some good work. Anyway, let's continue. All right. Once the bill was introduced, people from across the U.S. contacted the senator's office asking for relief from the consolidation program. There's no data on how many of the initial borrowers have since separated, but national and state domestic violence relief organizations say economic sabotage, like tanking a spouse's credit, is one of the top tactics used in abusive relationships. It's so powerful that many survivors cite their ability to provide financially for themselves and their children as one of the top reasons that they stay in abusive relationships, says Monica McLaughlin of the National Network to End Domestic Violence. NPR spoke to borrowers who had experienced physical and mental abuse from partners who now refuse to pay their student loans. They say Warner's legislation would set them free. There are so many barriers that survivors face, says McLaughlin. Let's knock this one down and look to the next one. Stebley and his ex-wife counted themselves among the lucky ones. They have an amicable relationship, so after they separated, they put together a court agreement to repay their loans. His ex-wife pays her portion of the loan to him, and then he pays the loan provider. It's a workaround, but it has some drawbacks. His ex-wife should be eligible for public service loan forgiveness, but she cannot claim it to erase her debt because their loans are consolidated. Now, notice the difference. Notice the difference in this story. Now, we don't yet know, so we still don't see a picture of Stebley, so we don't know if he's Black, if he's white, or anything else, right? But we do know that his wife, when his situation is kind of put up there, his wife is still faultless. She didn't reject him. She didn't, what's the term they used up here that I thought was so interesting? And economic sabotage. She's not accused of doing that. She just can't qualify for public service loan forgiveness. It's not her fault. But these niggas over here are trying to tank their wives, their ex-wives. Marvin, appreciate that support. Oh, we got Gigi up in here. Oh, what's up, Gigi? Yeah, so, she's innocent. She just, can't get into public service loan forgiveness. It's not her fault. But for all the guys that are implicated in this article, yeah, they're doing it on purpose, right? Officials have told Stebley over and over again it would only take less than 1,000 words to fix the problem and separate their loans, but those words have to be approved by Congress. I've been banging out 1,000-word emails trying to talk about this thing, daily for a while, trying to get somebody excited about this, Stebley said. To me, it seems very straightforward. You see a loving picture of a mother and child, because, black men don't love their children. So we drive the narrative home that much more. Got 2 pictures of Holly. Could have included a picture of Stebley or anybody else, but notice there are no men pictured in this article. Anyway, Holly Rodriguez agrees. She's a single mother of 2 in Richmond, Virginia, and is reckoning with her decisions from 2 decades ago. She's getting a divorce. She's in default on her student loans, and the 2 issues are more related than it may seem. Rodriguez's loan now amounts to almost $72,000. The jump comes from consolidating with her husband's loan, interest, and about 10 years of tenuous finances. We did pay initially, she said, and then my husband, soon after my daughter was born, lost his job. That put our finances in a very hard place. Rodriguez works in fundraising and communications for nonprofits. Her ex-husband works in the restaurant industry as a line cook and a dishwasher. Both went through periods of unemployment and faced medical setbacks over the course of their marriage. Finances were a very contentious element of our marriage when we were together, she says, and their separation wasn't amicable. In 2018, she filed for and was granted a protective order for her and her children. It was later dismissed. Given all that, getting her ex to pay up on student loans wasn't a top priority, but the collection agency kept calling. Now, let me back up a little and say something here. This one sentence is interesting. In 2018, she filed for and was granted a protective order for her and her children. It was later dismissed. Now, what impression does that leave you with? What impression does that leave you with? A protective order. No details, nothing else. Right? Leaves me with the impression that he was, she needed to be protected from him. And then somehow the fact that it was later dismissed was a further injustice to her. Now, I don't know what the particulars are in the situation, but the implication in the article was that he was a problem. Now, we've talked about before on this show how even during a divorce lawyers will sometimes tell their female clients to charge their husband with the molestation of the kids to get custody. Many men have reported to me over the last 5 years about how they've suffered from this. It impacts their lives, overturns them entirely. The accusation, however, is considered true because it was made. No evidence required. And even if it's dismissed, the impact on who gets custody, that still has an impact on it. But notice how that sentence is very vague, but it leaves you with the impression that he did something and he somehow got away with it, and it put her in a worse situation because he's just an animal. Anyway, given all that, getting her ex to pay up on student loans wasn't a top priority, but the collection agency kept calling. Rodriguez contacted her loan servicer to let him know about her situation. She provided her husband's contact information and proved he was employed, but it didn't matter. The loan was in her name, and the loan servicer said if she wanted him to pay, she would have to work it out with him. Rodriguez says her husband stopped regular payments on their student loans years ago. After repeated requests from NPR, he did not respond for comment. This is a freaking line cook. NPR is reaching out to a line cook because he stopped paying. Again, what was the term they used? Economic sabotage? Couldn't have been because he was fucking broke. Couldn't have been because he was unemployed. It had to be because he was purposely sabotaging her. Well, hey, it is what it is, right? I was told, yes, he co-signed with you, but you signed the paperwork first, so we pursued you first. Afraid any missed payments would directly impact Rodriguez's credit score, she took on the entirety of the debt. The thing is, I don't mind paying my student loans back, but I do have a problem with having to pay for my loans and his loans. I've been paying debt that isn't mine, and that's not okay. There's nothing that makes sense about that. For 2 years, joint consolidation borrowers could benefit from the pause on federal student loan payments, but that will change in just a few months. Payments start back on May 1st. President Biden has made his aversion to widespread debt forgiveness clear. Advocates and lawmakers acknowledge that a legislative fix should be an easy fix to make. Even when things are totally logical and rational, stuff takes longer than it should in Congress, Warner says. Getting the legislation through the gears of Congress, the same Congress that failed to pass Biden's social spending package and recent voting rights legislation, may prove challenging. End of article. Lot of low-key blows, right? A lot of attacks. A lot of like under the table kicks and digs at black men. Black men are never mentioned in the article. Black men are not talked about as suffering from this. It's primarily framed just with the use of 3 pictures and stories that are only tilted to her detriment in terms of the experience. Leaves you with the impression black males are the problem. Black males are economically sabotaging their partners. See, this is how we get to the outrageous misandry toward black men at the mention of a documentary that portrays them in a light of being human. You're talking about the way these kind of articles are written, the way these kinds of films are made, the way, I mean, this goes back decades in terms of media. You know, it goes back decades in terms of how black men are represented. This is written by someone named Sequoia Carrillo. Anyway, real interesting. But let's take this. Let's take this issue with abuse. Let's look at it. There's a number of different things we can look at, but what I decided to focus on for this particular show is we're going to talk about abuse. We're going to talk about abuse because one of the things you'll find is when there's an attempt to slander black men, abuse is one of the first things they throw out. And with the incarceration rate, the way it tends to be, especially since the 1970s and 80s, the idea is that any accusation that you make against black men is probably true. It's probably true. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at a study that examines issues around abuse. Okay? Now, I'm going to read the abstract. I'm going to read the total abstract for this paper. I've talked about this paper before, but I think it's pretty interesting that we return to it. And I tried to download because I've since had 2 hard drives since the last time I talked about this. So the paper itself, I've misplaced. I tried to download it again. I could not find the full copy anywhere, but I will read through the abstract and I will share the data with you. Okay. So let's look at it. No, that's not the one we want. Man, I've been making the same mistake all night. I don't know what that is. All right. Okay. So I think, yeah, here we go. So we'll do it this way. I'm going to read through the whole abstract, take you to the important part. So this is part of it, right? So the paper is entitled Rates of Bidirectional versus Unidirectional Intimate Partner Violence Across Samples, Sexual Orientations, and Race/Ethnicities, a Comprehensive Review, right? Written by Langen-Richson Rolling, right? Misra, Selwyn, Rolling, and it looks like we have Martin and Jennifer, so I'm assuming a married couple writing this. Dealing with and this is in the journal Partner Abuse, Volume 3, Issue 2, right? Abstract reads, one hotly debated topic within the field of intimate partner violence, IPV, is the degree to which IPV can be understood as primarily a unidirectional versus bidirectional phenomena. This topic forms a key component of the gender symmetry versus asymmetry of domestic violence debate. Resolution of this controversy has important prevention and intervention implications. In the current study, a comprehensive review of the literature was conducted, and 48 studies that reported rates of bidirectional versus unidirectional physical violence, in other words, male to female and female to male, were uncovered using a variety of search engines and key terms. One relevant meta-analysis and one seminal book chapter were also identified. Included empirical studies were published in 1990 or later, appeared in peer-reviewed journals, and contain empirical data directly related to bidirectionality of violence. Studies that only reported correlations between self-reported perpetration and victimization were excluded from these analyses. Qualifying studies were then categorized by the nature of the sample they assessed, i.e., large population samples, smaller community, purposeful or convenient samples, clinical or treatment-seeking samples, legal and criminal justice-related samples, and samples assessing the relationships of gay, lesbian, and or bisexual individuals. Okay. Rates of bidirectional versus unidirectional violence, male toward female versus female toward male were summarized directly reported. Oh, hold on. Sorry, I have a big speaker in front of that part of the monitor. Were summarized directly as reported or were derived on the basis of data contained within the article. Now, don't worry. I'm going to clarify this soon. I just want to get it on the record because we also have our inner light audience that can't see the screen. So I want to make sure that they've at least had a chance to hear the abstract. So we continue. All obtained studies, 48 empirical, 1 meta-analysis, 1 book chapter, were then entered into an online summary table for public review. However, additional results were specifically calculated for the current article. These results indicate that bidirectional violence, that's violence going from men to women and women to men, right, in an intimate relationship, was common. Bidirectional violence was common across all types of samples, population-based to criminal justice. This suggests that the role of women in violent relationships is important to consider, even if all aspects of women's perpetration of IPV are not symmetrical to men's perpetration of IPV. A second finding to emerge was that the ratio of unidirectional female to male compared to male to female IPV differed significantly among samples with higher rates of female perpetrated unidirectional violence found in 4 of the 5 sample types considered. Don't worry, I'm going to make it clear in a minute. Higher ratios of male to female unidirectional violence were found only in criminal justice / legal studies that relied on police reports of IPV perpetration and or in samples drawn from the U.S. military. Competing explanations for the differing ratios were offered in the current discussion. These need to be tested empirically in order to fully understand the expression of IPV across samples and settings. Differences in the directionality of the expression of IPV were not found in samples of gay, lesbian, or bisexual individuals. However, rates of bidirectional violence appear to vary by race and ethnicity, with higher rates of bidirectional violence among Black couples. Higher rates. Okay. Overall, it is suggested that if one resolution of the gender symmetry asymmetry debate is to argue that there are subtypes of male and female domestic violence perpetrators, right? Johnson 2005, Johnson 20, and that's not me, by the way. Or that subtype, or that there are different patterns of violence among different types of relationships characterized by IPV, researchers and clinicians will need to work together to determine how to reliably and meaningfully make these determinations in ways that will facilitate our ability to effectively prevent and treat all types of IPV. So, what does all of that mean? Here you go. This is what that means. So you can see at the bottom of the screen. Now, this is the very same paper, right? This is the very same paper, just presented as a pie chart. So you have 84% of relationships that are nonviolent, all relationships. 84% of all relationships are nonviolent. Of that violent portion, about 16% of those relationships are violent, right? 42% of those violent relationships are unidirectional, meaning they come from, one gender to another. 58% of that 16 is bidirectional, meaning there's violence going both ways. Now, if you look at just the unidirectional, one gender to the other, 14% of that violence is men to women. 28% is women to men. So this is one of the things we talk about when I say that usually when it comes to intimate partner violence, women tend to strike first. Women tend to use weapons to a greater degree. They do not always, their aggression is not measured by self-defense. It is often initiated simply because it's initiated. Men, however, tend to use their own hands and body, and they tend to do more damage, at least visibly. The other thing I argue as a part of this dynamic is that men and women have been socialized very differently around reporting. Going back to the 1970s, we've seen films, read novels. There's been all kinds of media around female victimization. We have not seen the same kind of thing with men. As a matter of fact, if you ask the average person to describe a real life situation where a man was victimized in terms of intimate partner violence by his girlfriend, wife, or whatever, most people will draw a blank. That's not because it doesn't happen, but because it hasn't seen its day in media. And when it comes to Black men, especially going back to The Color Purple onward, The idea is that men are violent towards women. So much so, that you can actually create policy simply around the specter, around the very ghost of the idea of the black male aggressor. Because that's what you saw in those last two things we looked at. Those last two articles I put up on the screen. They dealt with the black men were ghosts in the background. No data to suggest that black men are abusing black women in unprecedented. No, just when we look at what the data suggests, now this is a cross race. When you deal with the black community, and again, shout out to Dr. Tommy Curry. If you haven't read The Man Not, you're behind. Bidirectional violence is not only higher, as this report suggests, it's even in the black community. And that's with men not being socialized to even identify abuse, let alone report it. Men are not socialized to do so, nor are they encouraged to do so. We didn't grow up seeing films and movies and whatnot about male victimization. We didn't. That's not something that we readily identify in the same kind of way. Women do. And even despite that, the numbers are even. What would actually happen if men reported with the same amount of vigor as women? But again, when you can associate black men with this boogeyman idea, you can get away with all kinds of shit. That's what white women did. Feminist movement. That's what black women are doing. You're developing policy on the backs of black men. If you take feminine, we talked about this a couple shows ago. We looked at the earliest projects, earliest kind of frameworks around white feminism. It was predicated on the threat of the black male presence. This is white feminism, predicated on the threat to it. Black men were a threat. Why? Because when you start talking about voting, how dare black men get the right to vote before white women? So black men became a political threat, but even still a sexual threat, because the other card white women played was that black men rape white women, and therefore they should be protected, right? This is the foundation of white feminism. By the time you get to the 1970s and 80s and you start to see a rise of black feminism, they are using the same language that white ethnologists have been using without any kind of imperial backing to define black men as monsters. Black women are citing this work, Subculture of Violence Theory. Again, check with Dr. Tommy Curry. We've covered his papers in my broadcast pretty commonly, right? This is where they got the language from. This is where they cited it in black feminist works. And then it worked its way into black media. And to this day, when you look at black television channels, how many of them are targeted at black women? And if you don't know, usually you can see it in the names like BET, Her. But if you still don't know, you can look at the movie programming, the independent film programming, whatever kind of programming they broadcast, who are usually the central characters. And this is the third way you can know. Look at the commercials. Who are they targeting? When you start to see these kind of black media platforms overwhelmingly targeting black women as their primary audience, even when they're not black run, like TV One, black men are still the boogeyman. And the use of a narrative going back to white feminism in the latter part of the 19th century is still in play to this day. And now you have policy being developed at the specter of black men and boogeymen. Black men as boogeymen. Just the idea of it, just the presence of it is alone enough to generate policy that works solely in the interest of one demographic in the black community. Now you tell me which aspect of the black community doesn't need help, but only one demographic gets it, and they only get it at the expense of the other. And when they get it at the expense of the other, the question you have to ask is, what does this do over generations? If black men, and again, shout out to Jim Sedanius, rest in peace. We've talked about his work extensively here. If black men are more the target, if they are the outgroup males that are more the direct target of the state via white men, then you tell me what happens when you have generations that have witnessed black men not able to compete. Now, we have individual stories of brothers doing extremely well. There's no question about that. And it's not due to lack of trying, lack of discipline, lack of strength. All of that Bullshit about, you're weak and you're not trying hard enough. That's propaganda. Shout out to Ghetthouser. I don't know how to say that. Ghetto user, whatever. Thank you for that. Right. When you look at the legacy of black men being targeted, and if you doubt that it's primarily fixated on black males, again, go to the stats. Look at who's being arrested. Look at who's losing jobs or have difficulty having access to secure employment. Look who's having more difficulty having access to education that implies impact in terms of employment, white collar employment. Look at who's having difficulty in blue collar fields more than any other group. Look at, in all of those different areas, the impact of those things on providing family stability as far as black men are concerned. All of it. And the implications of that on every aspect of black life. And if you see black men struggling with this structural issue that is specifically targeted at them more than any other group, what does the family start to think about black men? Especially when her reality is far more stable without him. Shout out to BGS and the welfare cliff. She can do better without him. She can live off of $65,000 worth of wealth as long as she makes under what, $35,000? But if you add a man to that, he has to compensate for the difference she would get from the state. And if his employment isn't as secure as what the state can provide, he becomes an impediment. And if you see that from grandmother to mother to daughter to granddaughter, what's the opinion on black men? How does that affect worldview? How does that affect the perception? We're not even talking about the influence of media. And even when you have media trying to advocate for black male humanity, you have a generation of trained folk. Now, I also agree that some of this is probably the work of computer phantasms. I don't know what you call them, agents, bots, you name it. But there are enough women sharing it in terms of this petition against Tina Knowles' documentary that you can kind of see this ain't entirely a fabrication. The enmity, the hatred, the misandry targeted at black men is palpable. And it's multi-generational. But it's only snowballed since the 1980s. And it's become quite visceral in terms of people's sincere and intense hatred of black men. Mainly because they're associated with failure and lack. And even when they succeed against the odds, niggas still ain't shit. When I talk to brothers, and I can say I'm in this category, 6-figure earners, over 6'2", educated, accomplished in their given area, is the treatment significantly better? I have not heard a resounding yes. What I have heard is many black men finding out the hard way that when they do as they've been told, when they reach the pinnacle of what they were told they were supposed to reach in order to be considered good men, if anything, they were introduced to the idea that what they'd achieved was, I don't know, guaranteed, or it was supposed to just be provided to women simply because his job was to not only provide financial security, he was supposed to be well adept at emotional labor. He needed to know how to make her feel certain kinds of ways. He needed to know how to, assuage her ego, provide her with emotional support her financially, but not make her feel like she's subject to him. He had to be able to navigate, dip and dodge Matrix style around accusations of patriarchy, but still at the same time be able to provide the security associated with manhood in the 50s. Shout out to A.L. Evans. Appreciate the support. Yeah, you got to dip and dodge through this and provide it. And even then, it's a one-way ticket. You provide, you give. And when you start to ask, well, what exactly do I get for this? You're not met with a response. you're met with defiance and frustration. How dare you even ask? So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna drop the link. Hope you come up, participate. Dropping the link into the chat across YouTube, Twitch, and I'm not sure if it went to Facebook, although it's supposed to, but Facebook and StreamYards have been twitchy. So anyway, but yeah, you're welcome to come on up and chop it up. But I just kind of wanted to share some data with you and look at the ways in which, abuse, for example, is being used against Black men without any specificity, and how it continues to impact us even in terms of the development of new policies. Yep. Appreciate that support. Thank you. We got AB. BGS, get in here, man. All right. What's up, man? How you doing, AB?
What's going on, Dr. T?
You, man. What's the word?
And that interview that Tina Knowles did with what's her name, Gayle King. The vitriol, the misandry in the comment section was so bad. The divester, almost all the divestors had to come out and denounce it. I wish I was making that up.
I know.
Nearly all of them had to come out and denounce it. That's how bad the misandry was in the comment section.
Wow. Yep. Now I got AB in here. I got brother Malika, and I got brother Marcus Aurelius. Keep it 100. So welcome to the brothers in here.
Peace, Malika.
What's going on? Peace and love to you, brothers. How y'all doing this fine evening?
And all right, working it out. So we're looking at today the way policy impacts relationships, impacts Black men and women in particular. Feel free to drop something on this. Any thoughts about anything I put up there or anything related to that? What do you think?
It's kind of funny in conjunction with what you just stated and what Angry Man did earlier this afternoon, and with Tina Knowles putting out this docuseries. No matter whatever it is for us Black men, even if you have a woman or any other policies that try to humanize us, there's always that trump card or that trick bag that wants to dehumanize us.
Now fill me in, because I didn't get a chance to catch Valdez earlier. What was he saying?
Well, basically, he was using another YouTuber. I don't want to put her name on your platform because I don't want you to get demonetized or get any strikes here.
Like that? Wow. Okay.
I mean, I just don't want to bring other YouTubers in, and I don't want them to cause any strikes or destruction against you.
I sent you the video.
Okay.
That's who he was talking about.
Okay.
Now, this particular female YouTuber, female Black YouTuber, she basically did not like what Tina Knowles was saying. She was basically talking about how the way we Black men are often stereotyped for hundreds of years. One of the particular talks, she was talking with Gayle King, and she said, like, Tina Knowles was in the airport, and a woman came up to her and she said, how could you have your daughter marry Jay-Z? He is a gangster rapper and he promoted violence. And Tina Knowles kind of looked and she said, no, he's not. He's a CEO. She said, yeah, but he promoted stuff. He said, wait a minute. But then she had to really think. She's like, wow, these women think that. She said, I know he's a CEO, but he's this. And it goes back to what Valdez said and BGS said this. It's not what you've accomplished. It's what you haven't accomplished, but it's always, you're still always think about the negative stuff. Like, it's funny, Joe Kennedy created a great dynasty of politicians and create generational wealth for his family.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody always got to pull out. Well, there was gin hustlers back in the day, big of it, and a big lump of his wealth. But four of his kids, five of his kids, five of his great grand, all a lot of them are politicians now. Yeah, but a bunch of his wealth. He brought in a lot of stuff during Prohibition during the 20s and 30s, and that caused his wealth. And it's like, so, but a lot of people gained the wealth, but
right,
we're still vilified for doing something in the past. And Tiny TKO, I let it slip. I'm sorry, Doc. But
it's all right.
This particular YouTuber, she couldn't even get along with the whole show. She just kept talking about the vilification of what we've done, and even bringing up abuse and what Black men have done, and creating outrageous statistics that we're always the ones that's beating women, and this is just like the default setting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had a talk with my mom, and she said, "Yeah, but Black men be." I said, "When do you have the stat?" And I broke out the stats that you said. I said, interpersonal relationship violence is on an equal playing field. And she says, "Well, I don't." I said, "Yeah, because you're not looking at stats." I said, "If I bring you statistics," and I said, "if you're talking about interpersonal relationship violence among people or among Black people,"
right,
I said, "you're still going to look at it equal." And I told her, I said, "Go get your phone and switch on YouTube. Black women running over her husband or running over her boyfriend, or Black women shooting her boyfriend for leaving." And she's like, "What?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Switch on YouTube. Black woman beating up her man."
Yep.
I said, "But the thing is, when we get information like that," I said, and I told her, I said, "if a Black man wants to leave his woman, is it right for a Black woman to shoot him or want to hold him back, want to stab him? Is it right for a Black woman to sneak into a man's home that she broke up with and stab him and his woman in the bed because she crazy and she wants him, she doesn't want him to be with anybody?" But we'll pull out everything, all the stops of what Black men have did and Black men have done. And I even said to her, I said, "Show me anywhere in the history of Black people being in this country that Black men have oppressed Black women." I said, "Not abuse, oppress." I said, "Oppression and abuse are two different things, but Black women will use abuse as oppression and will often want to put us in that trick bag and keep us thinking that, well, it's oppression. We never oppressed you."
Right.
And we're talking about isolated incidents of abuse. And this is what we see. Like, you're Gen X, just like I am. And we grew up with this Black social mind fuck of Alice Walker with The Color Purple, with Terry McMillan through all her books and through her movies. And even, you know what? I can't even watch Love Jones either, brother, because you open my mind and I'm like, I can't watch this stuff. Because you see the imagery of how the way, no matter whatever Black men do, there's always got to be, no matter whatever positive, no matter what strides we do, there's always that seething waiting of, well, he did this or you did that. Or if you did, if a Black man has had something, like, I know for my success, I know somebody's always going to pull out, well, you had a criminal record, you did this. Okay, but you're going to take the one mistake I've had, but you're not going to look at all of the accolades I did. Jay-Z used to sell drugs back in the day. He hasn't held his tongue with that. He's rapped about it. He's talked about it. He's done biographies about it. He's known to do it. But Jay-Z has transitioned himself from a drug dealer from Marcy Projects to be one of the best rappers, to be one of the best businessmen, to be a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
But you always will go back and say, well, he said misandric raps. He sold drugs. He talked about hurting and killing people. Okay, that's something that's 20, 30 years ago. We can't talk about what this man has accomplished.
No, absolutely. And this is one of the things we become, stuck in amber, right? We become stuck in amber in terms of how people think about us, even to the degree where fabrications become truths no matter what. So, we don't think about how much black men have accomplished, because in most people's minds, based on a lot of media, really, we're just these static boogeymen. But I want Marcus to come up in here, aside from the fact that his little screenshots blowing up the spot. There was a discussion that he and my boy Denmark participated in that I want him to talk about. Marcus, you there?
Yep.
All right, man. Tell us about this discussion, man. What happened?
Okay, so as you can see, that was the name of the discussion. Feminists are also male worshiping. Why, if we know the truth, right? So, I guess the truth is, that we kill black women and we abuse black women and we do all of this stuff, right? Right. So I guess the follow-up to that was if we can't raise black males, right, then why give birth to them, right? That type of thing, right? So Denmark was in this clubhouse thing and he hit me up and I jumped in there, and then, I'm listening to these women talk, and, you always got the one white knight up in there, right? So basically they were talking about, I'm listening to them talk because I like to listen to a few minutes of the discussion before I say anything so I know what's going on. So you had the one girl talking about, basically that black women are always the forefront and the spearheaders of anything relating to black liberation, civil rights, and that the history of black men in civil rights and black liberation, their efforts have always been about black men and not necessarily black people. So it goes back to that thing you mentioned earlier about, black men being given the vote, right? So then they talked about, how black men's, I guess, killings in the media get more attention. And, it's so many things you said tonight that manifested in that discussion, right? So, they're talking about that, and they're talking about, Lawrence Smith Fields and, how guys were like, oh, we don't care, and this and that, blah, 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 right? So I'm just sitting here listening to all of this, at some point, I just, because nobody's going to ask me to speak, right? So I said, hey, this is Marcus, how you doing? So I jumped right in, how to do, man. So, I'm like, hey, man, how y'all doing? So they don't know what I'm going to say. I'm listening to this discussion. So I jump in and I debunk a lot of what they said. I first of all, I told them, I said, first of all, it's disrespectful that you pretend historically that black men have not been at the forefront of these movements. Not only that, but been, the number one, guy, we're the first ones to get shot. Right. And earlier you were talking about, guys showing up to protest. They talk about, there's protests and it's all women and this and that and the other. I mean, aside from what you mentioned about warrants and, like Denmark was like, we know that there's police there. Mind you, we're not often asked to participate in black liberation, especially not currently. These women will put together a march or a demonstration and not even ask black men to participate, then go out there and then pretend that the only reason we're not there is because we don't want to be.
Right.
So the conversation then went down into, this woman, she asked me, how come your peer group commits most of the violence and you commit, killing all these black women and this and that, yada, 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 yada. Right. I wasn't allowed to answer that question. Like Denmark told you earlier, I wasn't allowed. I start talking and some woman comes in and she's talking about, oh, you guys are just murderers and killers and murderers and rapists And pardon me for saying that on your channel, man. But you know, she said a lot of different things, you know, that it's just this indictment, right? Again, I'm like, you know, because when everybody else is speaking, I gotta be quiet, even if they're misrepresenting a lot of the stuff that I was saying. So, you know, I told her, I said, first of all, you talking about black women getting killed, you know, the number one leading cause of death for black men is homicide. Homicide is not even on the top 10 for any other demographic. Anybody can look it up.
Right.
Even in the top 10. So, you know, white knight jumps in, well, most of that is black men, right? But as outlined earlier in this video, a lot of us get killed in our own relationships. So we want to talk about the amount of black women that get killed in relationships. But you know, it is a statistical fact that black men experience the most homicides in romantic engagement and romantic relationships more than any other demographic. We can make the same argument that we get killed more than the Asian man, the Latin man, and the white man, and this man and that man, and you know, we get killed more from our women than any other man.
Right.
They had no smoke for me. All they could do was tell me, oh, you're a killer and this and that and blah, 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 and shut up and let's move the discussion forward because, you know, you don't want me to answer questions. So it was to summarize, if you heard it, because I'm used to hearing this type of stuff, but if you heard it would have hurt your feelings, bro. Like it's one thing that we read this stuff. It's another thing that we see this stuff online and we see these movements and all the retweets and likes, but I'm hearing the voices of the women saying it to me.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And it's crazy. It's crazy. And this is how these women feel. And I think that black men are struggling to accept that this is where we are.
Yeah. We don't want to accept it.
Yeah.
They don't want to accept it. Yeah.
So one more thing before I want to show you, because I had it up on the screen before. So let me bring that up real quick. And this is something that somebody had asked me about because you know I do like the film related stuff, right? So earlier you were talking about, you know, opportunities being given to black women and this and that and the third. So right now what I got pulled up is, I don't know if you can read it, but it's a diversity in casting incentive, right? So this is this is SAG-AFTRA, right? Okay. So it says productions can demonstrate diversity in casting by meeting the following criteria prior to the start of production: a minimum 50% of the total speaking roles and 50% of the total days of employment are cast to performers who are members of the following four, here's the words, protected groups. Number one, women.
Wow.
Okay. Number one, women. Number four, people of color, Black African American. So imagine you get one person who fills in both of those roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now you are checking off two boxes at the same time for not just a speaking role, but part of your cast, right?
Right.
All right. So these are incentives from the union. These are the incentives from the union to hire. You don't see, men, black, specifically black men or anything like that. Now, one might argue, okay, well, you don't see specifically black women. But again, protected groups, you can check two boxes at once by hiring a black woman or casting a black woman. And I pulled that up as a response to a Facebook conversation I was having about, certain, women and this and that getting casted in some of this stuff that we're seeing. So, I just wanted to hit you with that so that you could see it. And
well, first of all, I appreciate that. Second of all, man, you don't got to come in here with the super dope lighting, man. You know what I mean? You got to make everybody look. You see what I mean? This is what I got to deal with Marcus. You're coming in with professional level shit. You make me want to put my icon up, man. But now I dropped something in the chat. I dropped something in the private chat for those of you on screen, and I'm gonna put it on screen now because I want to add something, to your repertoire, as you guys, as we have to navigate these kind of debates. So, I've shared this before. I put the Google Drive link for it, but this is the male rape information sheet that I put together. I tabulated the data, and these are citations that come from various things. And I'll just go to the last point because there's plenty of information in there. I made it one page on purpose so that we can thumb through it quickly. I give this to my students because our attention spans these days. But anyway, when you look at the bottom bullet, it says when you add up made to penetrate cases, rape by the newer FBI definition, and prison sexual assault rape statistics, men, statistically black men especially, experience rape at much higher rates than women annually.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to have access to that because the go-to boogeyman, narrative for black men is abuse and rape. And when you point out that abuse is bidirectional and thus equal in the black community, their go-to from there is, well, you guys are all rapists. Well, there's some information with that's highly problematic, right? So when you talk about, incarceration, yes, you're dealing with other prisoners violating, each other. You're also dealing with female guards, which have a disproportionately high rate of abuse to black male inmates. But you're also dealing with made to penetrate cases where you have women that are initiating violence, sexual violence toward men. And there's not a lot of nuance. You don't hear that come up in the kind of discussions you were in the other day where people are transparent about how that goes both ways. And this is the thing, right? So we have a lot of data that's really just come out in the last decade where black men themselves have had to go through the work of pushing forth what's actually happening with us because nobody else is going to. But I completely agree that in those kind of discussions, I can't imagine how jarring it must have been just to hear that,
See, the pushback you might get from what you just mentioned is, well, it's men committing most of the assault, right? That's what you're going to get.
Right. Which is why I added the made to penetrate. You know what I mean? Those are mostly women, but still, I hear your point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's because, when I mentioned, black men being the recipients of the most violent, that's the first thing they go to. I said, well, black men aren't the only people killing black men. This idea is like, even, and I ain't going to mention no names, but I get a lot of flack from YouTubers, some of which are on Facebook. I ain't going to say their names. And they use these same talking points that these girls do. And, a lot of times, they're talking about, Pookies and Ray Rays and this ones and that ones. And they, they want to leave out the women's participation,
sure.
Women's proxy participation, and then, violence from outside the community that hits us more so. And this girl, she wants to talk about, people want to ignore that black women get killed by the police too. Well, we're not ignoring it, but you want equal, how can I say? You want equal coverage.
Yeah.
This is all lives matter shit, right? Where you want equal coverage for something that is not even proportionate. It's not even the same. And we have the numbers.
But keep in mind, too, when you look at the data around violence and sexual violence, for that matter, in female prisons, it's actually higher. The rates are higher. The numbers of women incarcerated are much lower. They don't even have prisons for women because they sentence men to much greater degrees for the same crimes. But the rates of violence in women's prisons, sexual violence, is much higher than it is in men's.
Yeah. Really?
Yes. And people don't want to acknowledge that component of it. So that's one component. And then, of course, when you look at the LGBT abuse rates in relationships, it tends to be higher than in heterosexual relationships.
Yeah.
But, again, you're dealing with smaller populations, higher rates, and somehow black men become the face of all of it. Right. Just because, but I want to also welcome up in here. We got A.L. Evans, we got Adam MGTOW, and of course we got brother BGS. BGS, you can dip in and out of anything you want to.
Okay.
AL, go ahead and drop what some of your thoughts on this.
How you doing this evening, gentlemen? Top of the day to you. I hope all went well. I hope you were safe and secure. It's hard being a part of the endangered species clan, but somebody got to do it. All right, so if I sit back and I've been going in and out of these YouTube spaces all day, just listening to this Miss Knowles versus the feminist movement, them railing against, just the thought of her wanting to put out a documentary uplifting black men. I mean, the thought occurred to me, Doc. I was like, they hate us that much that they wanna suppress and keep this documentary from the public eyes and views because of what? Just your pure unadulterated hatred of your fellow Homo sapiens? I'm like, man, get out of here. I mean, I've been flabbergasted all day. Every time I think about it, I'm like, really, it's coming to this point where just the average black female who is just walking in on the lines of those fences and tropes, just they come to the conclusion that we're just worthless. We're not even meant for oxygen in their eyes and minds. But what they fail to realize is this, Doc. We provide the spark of life, not you. You're just the regular old standard bearer egg carrier. Without us, you will cease to exist. But I digress, Doc. I digress.
All right, much appreciated. I'm gonna throw the ball in BGS court. You got anything you want to say?
You know what? Because I just did a video on this. A couple of videos on this, and this is they're passing on the same tropes that's been going around since emancipation. Okay, about black men being abusive, black men being lousy husbands, black men abandoning the family, black men being lazy, and so this is like all this stuff is nothing new. The thing is that they want to keep black men in a subservient position, and black women will never talk about anything about black men unless it serves them first.
Okay.
Even BLM, they didn't, they could care less about how many black men had gotten killed and shot by police and other folks, right? And women never said anything, right? Until BLM used it as a step stool. I think Marcus brilliantly put up that picture about the little girl standing on her brother's back to get a drink of water. Okay,
yeah.
That is literally, huh?
I was gonna say, if y'all haven't been following it, not only should you support Keep It 100's channel, go look at his community tab.
Yes. His community is off the hook. Sometimes I said I'm surprised YouTube hasn't come after him for the community tab, but that's beside the point. The thing is that he brilliantly put that up and said if that doesn't actually tell you the position and how black women think about black men, nothing will, because that exactly is it. And basically, we have been talking about the low-level hatred. Well, it used to be low-level hatred and low-level contempt that black women had for black men, and all Tina Knowles did was actually expose it. It's not low level anymore. It's actually out in the open.
It's visceral, yeah.
It's visceral now.
Yeah. Let me welcome Adam MGTOW to the conversation. Then after Adam goes, we can just mix it up, and anybody has something to say can just go ahead and jump in.
How's it going, brothers?
What's going on, man?
You all right?
Uh-oh. You bored now?
He's not providing enough emotional labor.
The V2 2000s got him.
We're hearing a lot of background noise.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting these. Wait, hold on. Let me see if I can.
He's getting alerts. Got to turn off the alerts, man. Candygram from Adam.
Yeah, my bad, man. Wait, hold on, just a second, so I can turn that down. But
on a Wednesday night, man, you got it like that, bro.
Wait, sweet Jesus! Wait, give me just a second. Now.
All right, go ahead and mute out. And y'all can see Marcus's. Y'all can see Marcus's avatar.
Yeah. Go ahead and enlarge it.
I don't know how to enlarge it on.
It should be right next to his avatar. And down below, in the bottom, in the green room, and click full screen.
All right, that should be it. Oh shit! Wait.
Okay, I don't see it in the green room.
It's okay. Yeah. Down below where we're all at.
Yeah.
Okay. Right next to it should be different squares. The largest square is full screen.
Yeah.
I don't see. Okay.
There it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
That's cool.
So,
Oh,
hey, Doc,
oh man,
you know, I had a guy, right, debate me in my comments over this picture.
Mm-hmm.
He came up with every narrative, trying to explain what was going on there other than what it was. He said, oh, well, maybe, well, first of all, he said that the boy his natural instinct was to jump on the floor and help the girl get up to drink. And I said, okay, well, it's natural, huh? He said, yeah, it's natural. Maybe they were in there and they were trying to figure out how she would get up to the water fountain to get a sip. And he decided to get on the ground. Well, first thing I'm thinking like, well, I hope she did the same for him, because I doubt it. Right. But then I asked him, I said, because the detective in me says, well, okay, well, if that's the case, if these kids were in there and they were figuring out who going to lift who up and she's too heavy for him to lift her with his hands, who took the picture? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that implies that there's an adult in the room, because someone took the photo and posted it on the internet. Unless you're telling me that another child did it, and then that child would have had to stand up on 2 milk crates to get that angle. I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
Okay. That picture is above those 2 children.
Yes.
And they're tall enough to lift that girl up for her to get a drink of water. That boy was instructed to get on the floor and put his hands over his face in his good clothes. Look at what he's wearing. In his good clothes, to let her, and then she took her shoes off to stand on them and drink.
Well, she
what
was enough.
What a metaphor. What a metaphor for this discussion.
But you know what that's funny?
Look how they depicting us, fellas. Look how they depicting us. This is it's tiresome. It really is tiresome, BGS Doc. I'm like, fellas, I'm like, now y'all get back on it. I just had to vent right quick. I'm tired.
Yeah, the thing is, that sums it up. If no other picture sums up the way that black women feel about us, that picture does.
It does.
Yeah, and one thing
this is starting the programming young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Imagine if this is up like when you start seeing it in schools, and they'll put a little title, "Helping One Another." Each one to teach one. Gentlemen always look out for ladies.
I'd be interested in seeing a picture with it reversed and see how women actually take it.
Oh yeah.
It would be reported to ACS. It would be child abuse.
You know what that reminds me of? Remember,
in fact, I've seen those cases.
Oh, really? Okay.
Remember those old African American paintings? You have black women sitting in the they're in the hair salon. You got a bunch of black guys, bunch of diesel black guys giving them pedicures and worshiping. That's that programming, that misandric programming that we're supposed to worship you. We're supposed to get down on our knees, and we're supposed to be subservient to you. And it's just funny. And can I tell you something?
Good.
Being programmed and being a Gen Xer, if I saw that years ago, I would have been like, "Oh, that's so sweet. That's so cute. You're supposed to do that."
Exactly. When we got it, I think one of the
Blue Pill program.
But one of the earliest ways we got that. Remember when you were a little kid, and you might have been the age of the kids in that picture, and you were on the playground, and a girl hit you, right? And it's this, you remember that was that time period. You the same height, you the same strength. She done popped you in the mouth, and especially the women. If you even raised your hand to respond to her the way she had you, they would swoop in from everywhere.
Yeah.
And teach you that you'd be 5 years old, 4 years old, and they'll be, don't you ever put your hands on her. And you just looking at them like, this girl done hauled off, and none of y'all had nothing to say about it until
she can't hurt you.
You see that.
I've literally seen teachers turn a blind eye and watch the little girl hit her knee and be like, and then turn her, and then the little boy get ready to rev up, and she'll look at the little boy like, you bet not. I wish you would. Or time to go to see the principal. I've seen all these scenarios. Y'all correct? It's sad.
But it carries on even into even when these women get professional positions. I was telling Dr. Johnson just the other day, you know, I mean, of course, I'm not going to mention the name of the woman or where I was working with, but she received a case,
Right.
you know, a nondescript case.
Right.
Obviously, it's still under investigation. I can't say anything more about it, but she received a case, and it was in the news, and the man was stabbed in the head and the neck.
Wow.
So I'm really trying to not say too much because it's still under investigation. But the first thing that she said was that he probably faked it to set her up because she had a case before where that happened. I said, well, what happened in the case before? It was the guy, he cut his wrist and pretended that his wife, hurt him, and it turned out that was false. Like, well, okay, that's possible, that's plausible, but I mean, why would a guy stab himself in the head and the neck to fake abuse?
Right.
And then she said, well, let's get the facts first before. He goes, yeah, I think we should get the facts before we.
That should have been the first.
Maybe we should do that.
Right.
It was interesting because, something you were mentioning earlier about, I just found it fascinating, or rather, it was just so odd that they said, oh, we want to make sure that we get this non-for-profit to help these mothers that are in jail to see their children. And yet it was the very same New York Times that put out an article in 2015 saying there's 1.5 million missing Black fathers and they're in jail, right? They were the ones who were saying that 50% of prison inmates have children. So 50% of your inmate population has children. And you know that the majority are men. But to reunite these families, you want to invest all this money in bringing mothers out of jail.
Right.
And you don't want to put any money toward bringing these fathers out of jail because they certainly don't want to see their kids, right?
No, they don't care at all.
Visitation hours is enough, right? Virtual visits is okay. That's
and I want to share with y'all. This is another brother sent me this. I think you guys might find it interesting because it's going along the same lines we were talking about here, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a women.nyc, right?
Oh yeah.
New York City is committed to being the best place in the world for women to succeed, right? And you got the research. Find a job, start and run a business, get funding, job skills and education just for students. Know your rights, right? Be the top stories, universal pre-K, access free legal help, speak out against gender-based harassment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have any of you seen anything like this targeted toward Black men?
Never.
I'll wait.
And basically, Doc, what you just described was a full seminar workshop package for welfare reform strictly for women. That's what it sounded like to me.
And Dr. Judge, what's interesting about that, if you look at the bottom of the page, it says NYC EDC, right? The Economic Development Corporation. And I was actually doing some research on them, and they have their annual statements publicly available. When I was looking at, they have an Excel sheet for 2021. And what's interesting is that it says at the top, all dollar values are in thousands. And then they start mentioning millions and millions of dollars. So these people are putting out billions of dollars in real estate and development and funding, and they're backing this organization.
Yes.
But when it comes to Black male-led organizations, for example, the brother, like you said earlier, who's a chef, and he's a master chef, and he's trying to help others, those are always grassroots. We need Black men to volunteer. So we always have to prop ourselves up. But here you have billions of dollars being funneled into this organization. A lot of this Excel sheet goes to 400 different places, and each of them are getting $1 billion a piece. So I wouldn't be surprised if they got a couple, $1 billion or $2 billion alone. Wow. And it's all for this funding. All of this stuff for them, just navigating the certifications and licenses. Marcus, you know how hard it is to lease in New York, and they getting this for free. Just be a woman and show up, and here you go.
Look at the women.nyc. This is the about page. Look at the imagery, right? You got at least 2 Black women, if not 3, sitting in front of a podium with apparently what seems to be a white woman talking. That's an interesting symbolic image just right there. But going down to program partners,
it looked like you summed up feminists at its finest. All the white women do all the high-pitched talking, and who carries the news? All the ladies, them Black women.
Well, look at it. Look at this. Citibank. We got Google. Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah, we couldn't even. They wouldn't even let us have My Brother's Keeper, and they got all this.
Yeah.
And
When my,
Exactly.
BGS, I have to piggyback off of it because I was just sitting here
hold on.
thinking.
Wait,
The
one second.
doctor,
Hold on.
okay, go ahead, go
One
ahead,
second.
go ahead.
When My Brother's Keeper came out, you all remember the vitriol extended to black men, most particularly, as if we somehow created it. I mean, Obama was in office, but I don't know about you. Obama wasn't exactly listening to brothers. I mean, if anything, he was finger wagging at brothers about how we're not, we're not acting man enough. But somehow we became, the ones that they had to attack for this, and they weren't. Black women in particular were not satisfied unless they somehow made My Brother's Keeper available to everybody. Y'all tell me, out of all of the programs that we've seen in the last 2 years, how many of these programs targeted for women and girls have you seen a movement, let alone a petition-driven movement by black women, integrate black males in
I swear he's reading
these
my mind.
programs? Any of them?
Zero.
No,
Zero.
That's what I was just going to hit on. I say the irony of what DGS just hit on and you just elaborate on. I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, what if we cock block, excuse my French, like these black women do on every single proposal that they want, a grant that they trying to get, begging for this and that. We just walk in the rooms as men and go, no, that we won't have for whatever they getting. If we can't have it, if we can't get none of what they want, they can't have it either. So we don't do that. We stand on our laurels and our morals and on our shoulders, and we go about it and we take this crap. So what if we were doing it? Like you were just talking about, look how they suppressed My Brother's Keeper. And I was just thinking, I said, when you said he was doing all the finger wagging, I was like, he's so right. And then I thought about it like this. You know who was probably bringing him those ideas? 3/4 of those women who was in his cabinet. They probably proposed the idea in good jest. He decided, hey, this is a good idea. Let me ride with it. Let me make this go for it. And as soon as he did, we see what happened. But I digress.
Well, and then we saw the program itself never had any federal backing. So even if the program, even if it went without any opposition, it wasn't well funded anyway. It was philanthropically funded. But this is what we're dealing with. I've not seen not one petition put forth by black women to integrate any of these programs for women and girls, but just the mention of My Brother's Keeper set off a firestorm. I remember the feminist woman that asked me to sign the petition, and I remember asking her, because I was still kind of new in terms of my understanding of what's going on with black males. I didn't have an argument yet. I was still just kind of thinking about things. But I remember asking her, I said, wait a minute, isn't there a White House Council for Women and Girls? And she just got real quiet and changed the subject. I'm like, wait a minute.
we got a Girl Scout, but now we got Boys and Girl Scout.
You see that? You see that?
Understand, of course, you're not going to see a petition for that because these are the things that they actually throw in our face when they get it, right?
Yeah.
So you got, this money that's being given to these women monthly. You've heard about these. I mean, you might have touched on it, right?
Oh yeah.
It's free money that they're getting right now. You get online and you see women that saying, "Oh, you guys are just mad. We getting this free money and you ain't." So it's actually something that they're using to wag in our throw in our faces and taunt us with. So they don't want us to have it. It's kind of like how they felt, I guess, when we got the vote and they didn't. They looking at it like, well, you know what I mean? Like, oh, y'all got one over on us. Not we're going to benefit from this somehow.
But you know what's funny though, Marcus? Here's the funny thing that we keep dealing with this situation. BGS has been saying this for 6 years since he's been on. I just wish you'd be honest and say you don't care about your men, but you especially don't care about your boys. Because this is not just about men. Exactly. This is trickling down to the children.
Exactly. Yes.
This is about other generations.
They'll never take that agency, sir. You know this.
And the funny thing is, when you say that, I said that to a woman, and it got quiet. Like you could hear Aunt pissing on cotton. I said, I just wish y'all admit and say that you just don't care about your boys. Right. And it got quiet for 3 seconds. What you mean we don't care? You don't.
You don't. I've said it.
I said for the past 40 years, we are still at the bottom of the literacy rate.
You know what? I was just going over the Monahan report. He was saying that Clark and was saying that in Dark Ghetto. So it's not the past 40 years. Try to pass 100 years.
Yeah, I was speaking with a social worker the other day. She's actually running for office around here. Nice lady, but what was interesting is that when we were having this type of discussion, I mean, I had to be very careful with how I have these discussions. But when I was having the discussion with her, about helping, because she's talking about helping the Black community, things like that, and that's one her political platform and all that stuff. And I said, well, what's your plan for boys or for men who haven't gone into these positions? Because she was more concerned with people who already have women who have already had children and now are single mothers. She's speaking with them. She's talking about men who have gone and come out of prison, things like that. But when it comes to the preventative measures, when it comes to the boys, she's like, well, that's a different problem. I said, what do you mean it's a different problem? Like, that's if you don't stop it there, if you don't help them there, then you'll eventually get to what the problem is, right? But she didn't seem to really be concerned about the boys or younger men. It was more so once damage has already been done, now I need to come in. And I found that to be a common, I don't want to say trope per se, but that seems to be a common way of thinking, or
yeah, it is
among social workers at least.
Black women love compromised Black men.
Well, here's one way we can see that. So y'all are familiar with this. This is a couple years old. This is 2017, updated in 2019, right? That exclusive 75% of Black California boys don't meet state reading standards. Now, this is the thing about this. I have not seen one organization pick this up and run with it. But y'all tell me, if we woke up tomorrow morning and 75% of Black girls in the state of California could not read, how would parents respond?
Oh, the schools would report it as neglect, and those parents would be charged with child abuse. There's cases where children don't show up enough times to school, or if their grades are really poor, it could be charged. Parents could be charged with child abuse. So that's why it's surprising that for Black boys, nobody's gonna. It's almost like they know that the charges are there. The legal framework is there to charge these parents with neglect, a form of child abuse. But since it's Black boys, I guess they can't be abused.
Right?
Yeah, really.
It helps keep up with the prison pipeline segue for the simple fact. Listen to what you just said. They be quiet when it's the mothers of the boys. But like you said, what if it was 75% of these girls that were going through this? There would be reform changes in every school board across the country, and we know it. The reason why they're quiet is these politicians quiet, these school boards are quiet, and these politicians are quiet because they know it helps funnel the prison to school pipeline. I digress.
So what I was going to say is, we're used to white people, white men, like, they have to perpetuate this, this difference in outcome, difference in success between Black men and white men, in order for them to have an argument to say that Black men are inferior, right? That is white supremacy as we understand it. At least it's a part of it, right?
Part of it.
Yeah.
Part of it.
Okay. Black women are, they're juking this result. They're doing this deliberately. They don't want better for boys because then they become better men, right? Again, I've said it a million times. Black women practice white supremacy.
They do.
Okay, they want these sorts of outcomes. They're fine with these sorts of outcomes because then they're justified in saying, right, that we're not fit to lead, we're not fit to be patriarchs, we're not fit for all of this stuff. That's why when you see men actually, right, excel, then they got stuff to say. Then you're oppressive, you're Mr. from the color, you're all of this stuff, right? When you actually do win, even though on one end, they're saying this is the outcome they want. Now, mind you, the women are, the primary custodian of children, right? So they are first in line when it comes to affecting these results. If they wanted it to be different, it would be. You know how we know? Because that's what they do for their daughters.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is why the daughters are the most enrolled demographic in the country across race and gender.
Yeah.
How, and I said this earlier in the show, how do you have in the same household the most enrolled demographic, and boys who are reading at a rate of what, 25% in
10%.
California.
Oh yeah, 25. Well, it's worse now, but that was years ago. So it's like 10% now.
Dr. Johnson, remember when you brought up the disparity between Ahmaud Arbery's sister and Ahmaud Arbery?
Go ahead.
You know how his sister is, graduated with I think she has a PhD now. Like, she's gone to school.
Don't tell me that, man.
So much.
Don't tell me that.
Ahmaud Arbery, we know he was, he had hopes of being an electrician, and we know how that, what his unfortunate circumstances, but it's just the disparity between the two. Even while they were alive, Ahmaud Arbery, he wanted to be an electrician, but there really wasn't much that much investment in him. But then you look at his sister, and how his sister just got a PhD, and was, I suppose, was able to pay off student loan debt, and no small part due to money that was
money coming from his lawsuit. Yeah.
Doc, already
strange how that works, huh?
The irony of it, from what you just said, sir, and I'm thinking about it, and it hurts. He was jogging, but he would always, they would say they would catch him in and out of vacant construction houses being, constructed. And it makes sense to me because my father was an electrician. He was trying to learn by osmosis by just looking, because he was like, this was an undercover probably dream of his, and he was going in and out of these houses that were half constructed and looking to see, this is how they're designing this and that. But instead of somebody looking at it, hey, this guy is trying to figure out something, they deemed him as a freaking threat. Freaking threat.
Yeah.
And if his parents invested in him in the same way, he would have been in trade school, but the investments went toward the daughter, for better, for worse.
That's one thing that Moynihan actually said it in his paper. It is better if there's one child that's going to make it and get educated, it's better for them to be the girl. That's actually in the Moynihan report.
In a minute, I'm gonna pull up.
That comes from Fraser and Clark.
Yeah,
wow.
I had a peer review study about that, where it's about it was about women's differences in expectations and outcomes between their sons and daughters. I'm looking at it now because I'm gonna put it on the screen in a second, and basically it explained how mothers tend to have a lower opinion or expectation on the academic.
Oh yeah, and unfortunately, black fathers the same way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've heard that because my neighbor, his granddaughter his daughter's a nurse, and his granddaughter has a MBA, and the first thing he said, you got to make sure these girls get as much education as they can. and none of the men folk in his family have degrees.
Yeah. Yeah.
BGS, that just lets me know he bought that blue pill old school theory of that hook, line, and sinker, and he's been selling that trope to his own damn self his whole life.
What did Elizabeth Stanton Katie say in 1860? It is better for a black woman to be a white man's slave than a black man's husband.
Here you go, Marcus.
Whoa.
Hold on, wait. Let me see. Yeah, this is what I think you're talking about.
Right. You got it, because I was going to pull it up off the page, but there it is.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Because
academic gender stereotypes and educated-related beliefs about sons and daughters in African-American families. You see the part in red. Consistent with hypotheses, mothers held less favorable expectations for sons and perceived sons to be less academically competent than daughters. In addition, mothers reported stereotypes favoring girls over boys in academic domains. Stereotype endorsement and in turn, was related to mothers' educational expectations for and beliefs about the academic competence of their own children, even when youth's actual achievement controlled. Meaning that when black boys were doing well in school, mothers still, or you could do that both ways. Black males were doing well in school and black females weren't. It did not change mothers' expectations and assumptions about who's more capable in an academic environment.
I'll take it even further than that.
Go ahead.
And me and you have spoken on this before. Again, my personal situation in the 4th grade was that, I was excelling over my sister. And my mother came to the school. You remember I told you this. She came up to the school because my reading scores were killing my sisters. My scores in school, period, were killing my sisters. When I got into first grade, they put me in a class behind my sister. And as we progressed, from second grade to third grade, they would move me up and she wouldn't move. But when we got to the fourth grade is when we had the issue. And when we got to the fourth grade, the school didn't want us to be in the same class. So it was either push me forward and push her back or keep me where I was. And my teacher at the time is sad, man, but this is the 80s. She went hard for me against my mom's.
White woman too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. She fought and I imagine me in that time as a kid. And and this is just indicative of what my upbringing in the house was, but to have somebody stand up for me in any manner at the time, you know what I'm saying, was a big deal. And eventually what happened was they pushed me forward and my sister had to get pushed back. And every grade after that, I stayed where I was and she kept falling back. The more grades we got promoted to, they pushed my sister back class-wise, and that had nothing to do with me.
Right.
Nothing to do with me. It's just that as we progressed, she wasn't keeping up. And so it's one thing for expectations, because that's a word, expectations of sons, academic performance, but it's another thing where you actively sabotage. You understand what I'm saying? Because you want to see that girl excel over that boy, and you're active in making this happen.
Yeah.
That happened to me.
It's a tradition.
My situation was more in terms of teachers and administrators. Like when I was my sister and I went to the same high school. Now we're both professors right now, but my sister and I went to the same high school. The high school counselor at that time told me that there was no difference between Harvard and the local community college. The overwhelming majority of Black and brown males were urged to go to the local community college. And a lot of the brothers I knew stayed 5 or 6 years and didn't even leave with an AA degree, right? So he told us there was no difference. Now, mind you, most of the teachers at that time, I think when I was 16 and 17 in high school, I graduated at 17. I was a practicing Muslim. I was a revolutionary nationalist. I was, all of that. These teachers did not want to be in the same room with me. It wouldn't, and it wasn't because I said or did anything. They just looked at me and that wasn't happening, right? Now, my sister was 3 years younger. The very same teachers would give her computers to take home. They were working with her. She graduated high school early, which was something I didn't even know you could do because they told her how to navigate the system. So she was going to community college and high school and graduated early. Then a friend of a teacher, they helped navigate her into UC Berkeley. Now, I'm not taking anything away from my sister. She's intelligent. She handled her business, but she was helped in ways that those very same teachers who would not even be seen in the room, they wouldn't even want to sit in the room with me alone, not in an after school meeting, not an after class question. They did not want to be seen in the same space with me, or I shouldn't even say they didn't want to be seen. They didn't want to be in the same space with me. They would not help me to any degree. And so the difference was my sister started off at Berkeley and then was able to kind of go up the ladder from there. I started off at Cal State Dominguez, and I had such little support. My idea, and this is taking nothing away from Dominguez, I had a beautiful experience. I met some great people, but my rationale at 17 for why I went to Dominguez was they had apartments for dorms. I wanted to live in an apartment going to college. That was the only thing I had because I didn't have anyone explaining this to me, right? So fast forward, I go to Temple, I go to Claremont. Claremont considers itself West Coast Ivy League. I had to climb those rungs, but nobody came at 15 and said, "Kid, you have talent. Let me figure this out." Hell, by the end of my undergrad, I was planning to go work at UPS.
Wow.
My mentor at the time said, "What are you planning to do?" I said, "I'm planning to go to UPS." He said, "No." And he's the one that pushed me into graduate school. But let me tell you how cold this was. I didn't really know what a master's degree was by the end of my senior year of undergrad. That's how completely out of the I didn't have any idea about grad school. I was told go to college, get a degree. I did. I was going to get a job, doing whatever I could to lift boxes. Nobody said anything until my mentor asked me a question. He had to explain what graduate school was and then pushed me in it. And before I knew it, I'm standing in Philly with 2 suitcases trying to figure out where my dorm room is. But that was so if it wasn't really for him, you know, but that's the impact now of having support.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Shout out to your mentor.
Yeah,
Shout out to your
Dr.
Dr.
William
Dunbar. Dr. Dunbar gives us a similar story why he went to get his PhD at Michigan. Same thing.
You know, it reminds you of the story we were just reading, you know, about Zion Brown and the alleged robbery, and what type of it makes me ask the question of what lack of support he had, right? Because you showed like the impact and the power of having at least some support mechanism. In your case, a mentor, you know, that could really guide you. And this young man, there's no mention of really any male figure at all in that article about Zion Brown and the alleged robbery out in Chicago, right? But this young man is 18 years old. He's a sophomore in college, it says. You know, such a bright future. You know, and what were the environmental factors or conditions? What type of lack of support? What circumstances may have led him to think that to think that way, or to engage in that, right? I mean, he's still a developing young man, but this shows that when you don't have support systems, especially for young Black men, and in the harsh environment that we face, you know, this could be a reality.
No, this is look. My mentor didn't even come along till my junior year, so that you know, that meant the very first teacher I'd ever had in my life that had confidence in me, I didn't meet until I was ready to graduate college.
Wow.
He came in just before, and here's the thing: just like the chef Daryl Schuler earlier, and Colin Kaepernick, as the chair of Africana Studies, it wasn't a program targeted toward Black men. He provided his resources and his guidance to any of his students. So I did get the help, and I'm grateful for it. But when you don't have any mechanism that actually unapologetically targets Black males,
exactly,
you end up in a situation where you hope you can get some kind of, you know, generosity extended in some generic fashion, but nobody wants to say this is for Black males.
Can I share something with you, gentlemen?
Go ahead.
I was talking with a person, and I told somebody, I said, this time in my life has been the happiest time in my life, meaning from going in my 40s into my 50s, meaning that when I got out of prison, I had no idea where I was going. When I got into school, when I got my associate's degree, when I got my BFA, I said, that's the happiest time in my life, in my 40s, in my mid to late 40s. And that person says, wow, why? I said, because I didn't have anybody around and I did something that I wanted to do. I said, I did not have anybody around. I said, I didn't have anybody around to hold me back, to tell me that I couldn't do something. And I said, specifically Black women. And they said, why'd you say that? I said, not to downgrade or bash Black women, but every Black woman that I dealt with, girlfriend, women that I have dated, my aunt, my mother, my grandmother. If I wanted to go back to school, I would have been held back. And even when I was in school, I was told, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? I said, I did something because I wanted to do it. I took a risk. I said, all my life, I had a security blanket and I had a net underneath me. When I had nothing and I jumped out and did something and I was afraid, I found out that I had courage. I said, this is something that is not taught to Black men. Black men are always taught to play it safe or don't play it at all. And 9 times out of 10 is we're not playing at all. And I said, do you know what it feels like for a Black man to achieve something? And I said, I want you to really think, not just you're achieving something. I said, a Black man, when he has odds against him, and also he goes and he does something that he wants to do because black men were not trained to teach and go out and get what you want to get. We're taught to play it safe, do what somebody wants you to do, go here and do this, get a job, take care of a woman, take care of her kids. 9 times out of 10, those kids aren't theirs, and just work for white people. And then maybe you'll get that gold watch and you'll get a pension. Not a full go for your dreams.
Slavery.
And I just said, do you know what it's like to just take a chance on yourself? And then you achieve something. And I said, it's not getting some little sheet of paper. It's something that you did something. And I said, it wasn't the fact that I just got this sheet of paper or these sheets of paper that I can wipe my ass with. It was something that made me feel good, that I did something because I wanted to do it. It made me feel good, first of all, as a man. It made me feel, a lot of us black men were not allowed to make ourselves feel good as men. That's why they don't want to have these programs. If you get this program, brothers, think about that. Obama was in office for 8 years. Think about how many black men could have succeeded up to now with my brother's keeper.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Think of, I said, I'll give you a thing. Like when you were talking about how so many programs, I remember when I was looking for grants, they gave me this binder, right? And I kept flipping pages. I saw programs for women that have HIV, women that have children, women that have handicaps, women that are homeless. I saw anything and everything a woman, Asian women, Latin women, women that have psychiatric problems that want to go back to school, women that are on a fixed income. And I could barely, it was like so many hundreds of pages. I couldn't even get to something for men. I had to put it down. And I was just like, this is the shit that Dr. T, BGS, and Anger Man is talking about.
You forgot the three-legged women.
Yeah. Women with webbed feet, women that got forked tongues, women that can fly and teleport and know how to spin on their back and tap their head and spin dishes and do everything. And I'm like, what the hell?
And
but then I was realizing it's design.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it gets so cold, man. I've gone to conferences, right, where they're dealing with Africana Studies conferences, and I've seen a 10-to-1 ratio, roughly. And that's changed over time. It got worse. Of women-focused projects, women talking about women, researching women, and focused projects on men, regardless of it's initiated by women or men, right? And I'm seeing presentations at this national conference on women drummers in Oakland, women that raise funds in Arizona. I'm like, are you fucking sick? You can have nuance and all kinds of detail when it comes to men. If you tried to put together a panel on black boys and literacy, one of the things we started to hear in the last 5 to 7 years more than usual was, well, you have to have a woman on the panel, or else the panel itself is not considered diverse. But when you look at all the other presentations at these conferences that are primarily women on women, doing research on women, talking about women, they don't have to have a man present at all. They don't have to have an LGBT representative. It's simply considered diverse because they're on it. And I'm saying, how exactly did it exactly switch to where black men became, we're not diverse enough as a focal point for research? When did that happen? That black men on a panel at a black conference in Africana Studies is not diverse enough. When the fuck did that happen?
In 1970s.
You ain't checking enough boxes.
Yeah. No, when women took over.
Intersectional.
Too patriarchal.
Yeah.
Man, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, there was a brief moment where you had black intellectual prowess, where actually promoting it from the 1967 to like maybe 1980, and after that, it got stripped away. That's why Dr. Curry said the two biggest competitors. He actually talked about it. Your biggest competitors is not white men; it's actually white women and black women. White women do not want black men to have power.
Yeah.
They don't want you to have the vote. They could go ahead. I'm sorry.
That goes back to the 19th century.
Yeah.
The same kinds of the rhetoric we heard back then.
Yes. I mean, it's precisely the same. The color purple is actually copied after the trope from suffragettes back in the mid 19th century.
Yeah,
no
but the idea transmitted to black women by white feminists and then espoused since then is that even back as far as the 1800s, if black men get the right to vote, they'll further oppress black women.
Yes, so yeah.
Yet we've not seen any evidence of this in American history.
No.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, in some cases, we've seen the reverse. A lot of people are surprised when I bring up that at least in South Carolina and Louisiana, the majority of, the number of black slave owners is aberrational in and of itself. We're talking about 5% or less of all people who own slaves were black. But of that 5%, 70% of black slave owners, at least in North Carolina and in Louisiana, it's very likely in the rest of the South, were black women. Right. And they weren't. There's a study I was reading recently. It was a paper. It's going to be approved. But the paper was basically saying that they could tell that some of it was, because they were purchasing family, because it was illegal for a black person to manumit another. But in many cases, it was for business purposes, because there'd be no reason for you to take out life insurance policy or to trade and sell your spouse or children. There'd be no reason why a woman buying her husband would buy 3 grown male slaves and have them working on a plantation. Like, I see you smile there, Marcus. We're on live. I'm not gonna say that crazy, but but you see what I'm saying. So
it's economics, man. Because if you think about it, the one thing that they say about listening to Confederate historians, man. Something that sometimes they tell the truth. 70% of America's wealth came from the South and from slavery.
Yeah.
So it's all about the economics. The biggest money producer in the United States, man, for 200 years, even during Jim Crow, was the bodies of black men.
Well,
straight up, no chasing.
Unfortunately, fellas, we're gonna have to close out at 8. Interlight has to respect. We have to respect their programming, and then my son and I are having a horror movie battle tonight. So
okay,
on the menu.
There we go.
On the menu. I was watching the Born Identity movies last night. So
no. Tonight we're watching one called Antler. So we're gonna check that out. So if you guys got any suggestions, holla at a brother. I use these kind of films to help them navigate, to show them how to navigate certain things. Anyway, but I want to say I really appreciate y'all brothers for coming up. I appreciate it. Thank you. Especially for dropping your wisdom, your experiences. Make sure you support BGS more. Make sure you support. Is it BGS Books?
Yeah.
BGS just subscribe.
Books,
yeah. Subscribe to that.
I'm gonna start putting more stuff over there, especially the book stuff, man, because I know they have a angst against me publishing anything with Tommy Curry's name on it. So
and then then the last one is Black Gnostic. What is it?
Black Pill Gnostic.
Black Pill Gnostic. Support that. Definitely support Keep It 100's page. AB,
even though he ain't shit, but it's all right.
Hey, BGS. If you think my community tab or YouTube's bad, actually, hey, look, everybody here that follow me on Facebook, they already know it's been a long time.
I apologize. I got to cut it quick.
All right, sir.
But AB, you still got your channel?
Yes.
Yeah. Support AB Media. And let's do this. So much appreciation to all of y'all.
And one day Ian will get one. We'll work on it.
I support AB.
All right, fellas. I apologize. I gotta shut it down early, but y'all have a good one.
All right.
Hey, stay out of the back to tank, okay?
Right,
I'm gonna post that meme with this is Dr. J in the back to tank.
I gotta take y'all down, man. Y'all
all right, peace.
No doubt,
peace,
no doubt.
Man. All right.
Thanks for having me, man.
Peace, man. Appreciate it.
Peace.
All right, man. Peace. All right. My apologies, people. We're gonna have to close out. I hope you guys have a good weekend. Please make sure you drop your thoughts in the comment section. and appreciate you. Support the Onyx Report, and I'll holler at y'all later. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic and selfish and unrealistic needs. You define your worth.